0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel. Welcome to The Late Show live. I'm afraid we are going to bring you anything we can. It's obviously a very moving situation here in Washington, D.C. this evening. President Trump arrived back at the White House. I'm going to have some British and American guests with me in the studio today, and of course over in London as well. So one of the things we want to talk about is going to be what Prime Minister Starmer said earlier in the afternoon. I don't know about you, but I found it pretty underwhelming. I'm sure some of my guests will agree as well. Should we have a quick look at it to remind ourselves what our mighty Prime Minister said about the situation in the Middle East?
Our partners in the Gulf have asked us to do more to defend them. And it is my duty to protect British lives. We have British jets in the air as part of coordinated defensive operations, which have already successfully intercepted Iranian strikes. But the only way to stop the threat is to destroy the missiles at source, in their storage depots, or the launchers which are used to fire the missiles. The United States has requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose. We have taken the decision to accept this request. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Well, underwhelming to say the least. Meanwhile, President Trump said he would continue until all the objectives are achieved. And breaking in the last few moments, reports of a blast near British Air Force Base in Cyprus. And Israeli military reporting projectiles are being launched from Lebanon, the first such launch from Lebanese territory since the start of the America and Israeli strikes on Iran. As we speak, Donald Trump is returning to Washington, D.C. I think we can hear him speaking now. OK, this is the latest pictures that we have. This was the president returning after what will go down as one of the most historic weekends that he had in Mar-a-Lago. Probably a lot less golf and a lot less sunbathing and a lot more talking to the world about the fact that he was taking that decisive action against Iran. Let's get, as the clock just flicks over into midnight, let's get an update from GB News' national reporter Charlie Peters, who can bring us up to speed on what has been an extraordinary day. Charlie, thank you for staying with The Late Show Live.
Yes, hello, Bev. Yes, well, it's been an extraordinary last hour as well, because Britain has now been drawn into this war directly, with a sovereign base being attacked by a one-way attack drone. It looks to be a Shahed small drone that has hit the airfield at RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. Now, at this stage, security sources have told GB News that no major damage has been caused. It's just a minor disruption to the airfield, and that there have been no casualties. That personnel on the base remain in shelter. But I have had this described to me by one source as a wake-up call for the United Kingdom, Bev. And that comes, of course, as the base has no ground-based air defence system. It's relying very much on the RAF jets scrambling into the skies to intercept drones and missiles, and cruise missiles, that is, being fired towards the area. Anything that's a ballistic missile, we don't have the capability to intercept it at Akrotiri, so totally reliant on RAF jets and partners in the region. At the moment, I don't believe there's a Royal Navy destroyer there. There is a naval surface, a sort of naval to air interception capability available on the destroyers that the Royal Navy possesses, but I don't know if we have any assets in the region able to do that. During the Houthi strikes on the shipping lanes in the Red Sea in 2023 into 2024, we saw HMS Diamond, a destroyer of the Royal Navy, regularly intercepting drones and missiles fired from those shipping lanes. But totally reliant, I believe, on the RAF now, and indeed partners and allies in the region. We do know that there is another US aircraft carrier moving towards the eastern Mediterranean, having passed through the Strait of Gibraltar, relocated from the Atlantic in the last week. There are also the Israeli assets available to intercept missiles fired from further afield. But it looks likely at this stage that the drone that was fired towards Akrotiri would have been fired from Lebanon. That incident occurring around the same time as we've had reports from the IDF that 6 missiles were fired from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. One of them was intercepted, 5 others fell in open areas. And Bev, that's a very significant update indeed, because that now means that a new group has entered this war. Hezbollah, one of the Iranian proxies, having previously suggested it would not engage in this conflict, having been so severely degraded by the Israeli military in recent years. But now it appears that it has engaged and fired rockets into Israel at a time when Israel has stood up some 100,000 reservists and also been intercepting missiles, dozens of them, fired from Iran into central Israel. There have been 2 impacts today. Beit Shemesh in central Israel near Jerusalem, and also another impact near Jerusalem earlier this evening. At least 9 killed in the first attack, several more injured, some people unaccounted for, and no major injuries rather, reported in the most recent strike. 1 moderately injured, 3 others reporting some injuries. So a very significant security situation for the Israelis, but also now for the United Kingdom. As Keir Starmer permits the US to use those bases, what will the Commander-in-Chief do next? And what can the US offer to the United Kingdom to protect the bases that we will give them permission to launch defensive strikes from? Because if this is a taste of what's to come, then British personnel could be in serious danger.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Charlie. Amazing work today from you on GB News, and no doubt you'll be hard at it again tomorrow. But let me know what you think at home. gbnews.com/your say. A lot of people already getting in touch to say that that speech of Starmer's made them cringe, that they said, I feel embarrassed to be British when we have a leader who comes out at a time like this and speaks in such a mealy-mouthed way. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined in the studio this evening by Border Security and Immigration Specialist Simon Hankinson and former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, both incredibly familiar faces now to our audience, both of you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And in London, of course, we will be hopefully going to one of our contributors as well throughout the evening. But let me start with you, gentlemen. It feels like Saturday morning is a long time ago from when we heard that these strikes were made on Iran. Niall, just broadly your thoughts before we get into the weeds of this evening.
Well, thanks very much, Bev. And without a doubt, we're seeing, President Trump really changing the course of history here. I mean, he's really, in my view, the most consequential US president of the modern era alongside President Reagan. And what we have seen really from President Trump is real decisive leadership. In my view, he's taken the right course of action. We should get this evil regime in Tehran out of power. Actually, it's a monstrous dictatorship. It's the world's biggest state sponsor of terror. It has the blood not only of Americans on its hands, but also a lot of Britons as well. Many British soldiers died in Iraq as a result of Iran backing terrorist movements there. And so what President Trump is doing here, he's leading the free world against incredible evil here, and I think that the action being taken by the United States is absolutely the right approach. Keir Starmer should have been standing shoulder to shoulder with the Americans on day one, but he hasn't. Only tonight has he given sort of half-hearted support. It's not enough. Starmer's leadership has been absolutely weak-kneed and appalling, in huge contrast, of course, to President Trump, who's been decisive and I think very, very strong.
Your thoughts, Simon, as we kick off this 3-hour show?
Yeah, I had to take some time to think it through because this is so momentous. But I concluded that, Niall's right. At a certain point, you can't let someone say, I'm going to kill you, death to America, over and over again and make it national policy and move towards getting weapons of mass destruction and not stop them. So I feel like we've been kicking this can down the road ever since I was a kid, and we lost 241 Marines in a barracks that we believe was Iranian-sponsored. Biggest loss of Marines since Iwo Jima in World War II, and they have sponsored terrorism with Hezbollah and Hamas and kidnapping of Americans, torture of Americans for the last 50 years. So I think something had to give, and it finally did.
Yeah, let's talk now to the Senior Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Andrew Fox. Good evening, Andrew. Probably first of all to Simon's point, I guess, which is, if not now, when? Because if previous presidents and prime ministers across the world have not made an effort to undercut this very dangerous regime, President Trump is the only one with the backbone to do it.
Well, the White House has been very clear as to their goals for this operation, and those to degrade the Iranian regime's capabilities, make sure they can't achieve a nuclear power status, and to remove their missile threat. And so far, all of those things are going exceptionally well. The only real hanging question, I think, is where this ends and where it goes once the bombs have stopped falling. And that really is still the area where we are waiting to see how this unfolds.
How concerned are you about the situation in Cyprus, Andrew, with the Akrotiri base having been hit? Are you familiar with that base? How impactful will that be in terms of any military capabilities now from the West in that area?
Oh, I'm very familiar with Akrotiri. I've flown through it several times, and my first ever posting in the army was indeed about 20 minutes away from there, so I know it very well. We know the American U-2 spy plane flies out of there. And we know also, of course, that there's very little chance that a drone would have flown all the way from Iran to there. It's almost certainly come from Hezbollah in Lebanon. Whether there's the chance to repeat that, I don't know. Every now and again, a drone will get through. Unfortunately, that is the nature of drone warfare in 2026. But what it has done, of course, is illustrate that this is now a regional war. It's illustrated that this is not just a risk to Israel, it's not just a risk to the Gulf states, but it's actually a risk that goes far beyond those borders. And Mr. Starmer, I think, was right to reverse course at this point and ensure that the UK can play a proper proper role in what is now a regional conflict.
Is it a risk to the UK mainland, Andrew, at this stage?
Well, the biggest risk at the moment would be from subversion or the activation of sleeper cells. We have seen IRGC, the Iranian sort of overseas subversion activity. We've seen journalists stabbed on the streets of London. The Ayatollah, well, the former Ayatollah, had an office in London. So there is a significant Iranian presence here. It's undoubted that our security services will be on high alert and will be monitoring that situation extremely closely. But it certainly is, of course, a risk.
Absolutely. And what do you think about Keir Starmer's statements? We weren't on board, we're slightly on board, but defensive, not offensive. We didn't give them the bases, now we do give them the bases. What does that tell us about our role on the global stage when it comes to conflict?
Look, I think Starmer has played this in possibly the worst way possible. I think the best thing he could have done was take a position and just stick to it. And instead, what he's done, as with so many issues, is just commit U-turn after U-turn and turned himself into a knot. There was a clear legal basis for this war when it comes to Israel. They've been in this war since 7th of October, and it's not a new conflict. This is a continuation of everything that's happened in the Middle East since that dreadful day. Israel are entitled to ask their allies to help them defend themselves, and so there's a very clear legal rationale there. And by standing on international law and then turning on his head, it's made us look weak and indecisive. Frankly, he'd have done better if he just stuck to his guns and said no. But unfortunately, he hasn't, and so we're left as a bit of a laughing stock, which is a very frustrating place to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Senior Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Andrew Fox there, giving us a really clear analysis from that military perspective. It's at times like this you need real men in the room, isn't it? Let's talk to Paul Cox. No offence, Paul. Talking of real men, Paul Cox, GBNews contributor, is down the line for us, and also Nigel Nelson is with us, GBNews' senior political... Did I just call Paul Cox our senior political commentator? Senior political editor. Evening, gentlemen. It's been quite a busy week for me, and some very, very long nights. But listen, I thought what Andrew Fox was saying there, Paul, was really interesting, that there is a clear legal basis for this in terms of America and Israel, and that this is a continuation from October the 7th.
Yes, and I think that a lot of people have believed that there was a clear legal basis before this happened. You think of the threats from Iran towards the West, specifically the US, the United Kingdom and Israel, the threats that they've made to the rest of the UAE and the Middle East. That in its own is a basis to protect yourself, and this is exactly what the US have done. Nigel will be here for balance, so we'll go over to him in a minute. But my point of view is entirely that what Donald Trump has done has both been great leadership and utterly necessary. Bev.
Yeah, Nigel, good to see you. I don't see you very often at this time of the night, so it's really nice to have your contribution this evening. There are a lot of Democrats and left-wing politicians in this country at the moment calling for basically Trump's head on a stick, because they think that this is outrageous, that it's an incursion that was completely unjustified, that he has no legal basis for it. But aren't those people just playing politics with what is, frankly, an important issue for the entire world to rid Iran of nuclear capability?
The whole point of international law is to maintain world order, and when you start ignoring it, world order begins to break down. So in this case, as far as the UK was concerned, Keir Starmer took legal advice from the Attorney General. That advice was that this war didn't have any legal basis, and the reason for that is because it should have had UN approval to have passed that test, or alternatively, there should have been an immediate threat which required self-defense. None of those conditions were met. What has happened since is that Iran has now recklessly fired missiles all over the place, including towards our bases, and we're in a position to defend ourselves. That is within international law. That is what Keir Starmer is doing.
Let me come to you on that, Simon. Your thoughts on Nigel's assessment of the situation, that it's not a legal war?
Well, you know, international law is kind of a fiction. It's what treaties countries agree to. And the United Nations, you can argue that, you know, jaw is better than war, but it hasn't solved a lot of problems in my lifetime, you know, going back to maybe Korea. So I think countries act in a way that they need to defend themselves. I mean, I remember, I think it was yesterday, Putin was complaining about the United States breaching international law, which is a bit rich from the guy who invaded Ukraine. And yeah, I mean, I suppose technically Starmer can say we were attacked first, but the idea would be that there was an imminent threat and Iran was moving towards a nuclear weapon and that they had to be stopped.
And I think, Niall, that President Trump has been at pains to explain in those statements his logic for carrying out this action, that it's incredibly important to him that he feels that the American public understand why he's done this. Do enough of them, Niall, understand?
I think so, and I think the United States has every right to act in self-defense against the Iranian regime. They're only months away, even weeks away, potentially, from building nuclear weapons capability once again. And the Iranians pose a deadly threat to US national security. It's as simple as that. As for international law, I mean, who sets international law? The United Nations with Russia and China on the UN Security Council. It's used actually as a shield, in fact, to defend some of the worst odious regimes on the face of the earth, notably the Russians, the Chinese and others. And Iran hid behind international law for decades, and that didn't work out very well for them. And the United States has every right to defend itself and its allies. In my view, this is a war for the defense of the free world, and President Trump has shown decisive leadership. Thank God we have a president like Donald Trump, actually, and not someone like Keir Starmer, who bows down to what he calls international law and international courts. And we don't need that kind of weak-kneed, cowardly leadership. We want to see the leadership from figures like Donald Trump, who actually stand up for the American people, for the US national interest, and as it happens, for the entire free world.
Yeah. Paul, just briefly, what's the sense in the UK? Help us out here in America. How frightened are normal people on the street about this war?
So it's difficult to speak for absolutely everybody, and much thanks to this GB News coverage and your excellent work last night as well, Bev. Overnight, I watched a lot of last night. GB News is creating a great deal of solace for people because they're being informed. And there is a vacuum created by Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer has stepped back, stood behind international law, is not leading the country, and we are looking to Donald Trump. So the fact that we have this TV station that is telling us what Donald Trump, showing us what's going on, talking about it, having lots of different voices. I think that it's creating a sense that we're okay. I think people are worried because they've all got friends and family around the world. Cyprus, for instance, Dubai, of course. So it is a scary time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got an extra hour of us tonight as well. We've got more analysis to come this evening on The Late Show Live. Stay with us and let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. I'm going to read them now while we take a very quick break. Back in a minute.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Late Show Live from Washington, D.C. So President Trump has arrived at the White House only moments ago, having spent the weekend in Mar-a-Lago. This was him descending down the stairs in his red baseball cap and his big blue woolly coat that he often wears. Although I have to say it was a beautiful day in Washington, D.C. today. Spring has sprung here, ladies and gentlemen, but not necessarily going to be a relaxing few days in the spring sunshine for this man that we're watching on the screen here. Lots of questions that he is returning to in this city from the Democrats in particular, who are asking for him to explain his legal justification for dropping the missiles on Iran. The press are there. Actually, he didn't say anything. He didn't talk to the press, which can be unusual, frankly, in this town. Would you have expected him to say anything, Niall, on a night like this?
Yes, actually, you know, normally President Trump does actually respond to questions in this kind of scenario, but because of the tremendous gravity of the situation, of course, the President doesn't want to give away any military intelligence. So I imagine that he was advised not to speak because of the sensitivity of military operations right now. So, but normally, 99% of the time, President Trump would be speaking in a situation like this.
And you know, in fact, the White House often issue messages, communications throughout the weekend. They've also been very quiet, Simon, this weekend. This is one of those situations, as Niall says, where there is so much at stake that actually they need to keep the messaging very tight, don't they?
Yeah, and they can't afford to be 30 seconds behind the headline, because, you know, every time I pick up my phone, there's another strike somewhere, missiles landed, something's happened. So they don't want to be declaring the situation to be as such and then find themselves outflanked.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we'll be watching for any messages that do come in from the White House. In fact, I believe I've just had something in my inbox, but we'll have a look if we can bring this to you from the White House. Let's talk now to our next guest, which is Editor-in-Chief of the Jewish News Syndicate, Jonathan Tobin. Jonathan, very good evening to you. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me. So just the reaction this evening from your organisation, from the Jewish News Syndicate, just in a nutshell, how are you feeling tonight?
Well, on the second day of this war, we're dealing with some of the fallout. 3 American soldiers were killed. We've had casualties in Israel. 9 people were killed in Beit Shemesh, and another person was killed in Tel Aviv. This is tragic. On the other hand, the opportunity that this conflict is presenting of significantly reducing the power of the Iranian regime to inflict harm, not merely on Israel, but on the entire Middle East, on the rest of the world, and on American interests, is obviously a positive thing. The elimination of its leadership. We don't know yet whether the Iranian people will be able to overthrow this government. But however this shakes out, this is a moment in which history is changing. The idea that this regime can continue to terrorize the world, as it has. The world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, causing the United States at times under the Obama and Biden administrations to basically bend the knee to them in their efforts to appease them and their various auxiliaries. We've seen in the 2+ years since the October 7th attacks how Iran's strategic decision to attack Israel through its proxies has been a disaster, and piece by piece of their map of regional hegemony that they sought to create with allies in Syria and in Lebanon, they've been picked off. Gaza, Hamas is still alive, but they're much weaker. So this is a major strategic victory for the West as well as for Israel. However, whatever happens in the coming days, and we don't know. Obviously, wars are, things happen, and nothing is certain. But this seems to be something that is creating a real strategic victory for the West, for Israel, and a tremendous defeat for these Islamist forces who have been, whether many people in the West understand it or not, have been waging war against everything we believe and our rights. So. I think it's a time to be hopeful, even as we worry about what happens in the war in these coming days.
Yeah, and Jonathan, the trouble is when you're dealing with an ideology that is so entrenched as such extreme Islamic fundamentalism, how do you defeat that with bombs? Doesn't it very much depend on the next people, the next ruling regime in Iran have to be much more moderate in their religious outlook? And how on earth does America do anything, and Israel, to make that happen?
Well, Israel and America can't make that happen, but they can create a window of opportunity for people who'd like to go in that direction within Iran. Bombs can't do everything, but they can take out dictators. They can take out, evil regimes, as this regime in Iran has been for the 47 years of its existence. Donald Trump isn't making the mistake that George W. Bush made in Iraq and Afghanistan by sending in troops and educators and social workers, hoping to, create a Jeffersonian democracy in countries where that's not what they wanted. He's not going to do that, but he is creating the opportunity for a real chance for something. And, we can only hope that that will happen. We know that there are many people in Iran. They've taken to the streets in their tens of thousands and been murdered in their tens of thousands by the regime. We know it's unpopular. The question is, are there people with power, people, with some military, do sections of the Iranian military change sides? We can hope so. I don't know so. Neither, nobody speaking on this broadcast can speak with certainty as to what will happen, but they are going to have an opportunity to do that. And those who are, sort of cheering for the Iranian regime from afar, the Zohran Mamdanis and the Tucker Carlsons, to speak about, two people from the left and the right who are united only by their hatred of Trump and their hatred of Israel and hatred of Jews, they're a sinking ship. The idea that this is going to be, a political problem for President Trump, I think that it's a grave misreading of Republicans and conservatives and the American people as a whole. Even the New York Times has to concede that the Iran regime is evil. And, I don't think this is going to turn out the way Trump's critics think it's going to turn out. And just as this war has not turned out the way that Khamenei and Sinwar and the rest of the evil people that worked for him thought when they began the series of events that led to this.
Okay, Jonathan, really interesting. Thank you so much. Jonathan Tobin there, Editor-in-Chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. Niall, that issue of how do you beat the ideology, though, it's almost not getting enough attention in this conversation. That what this may mean for the UK, especially and for Europe, is a dilution of fundamental Islam, which is so problematic for the West in various ways, not just in terrorism, I would say, but in all sorts of ways in which those people try to turn the ideological dial. Will it make any difference, though?
Yeah, I think it does. And the fact that, the Ayatollah Khamenei is now dead, the biggest single Islamist monster on earth is gone now. And so this is incredibly consequential for the future, because the Iranian regime is the world's most powerful Islamist regime on earth. Yeah. And if it topples, this is a massive blow to the cause of the Islamists across the world. And even inside Britain itself, I mean, the Iranian regime has been responsible for no less than these 20 terrorist plots. It's also an instigator of Islamist extremism across the UK, across Europe. And so if this regime falls, this will be, I think, one of the biggest blows in history to Islamist ideology.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. As you share the optimism, Simon. I mean, you've got thousands of people across the world, possibly millions, who are prepared to die for their religion. That is a huge part of that extreme version of Islam. Won't they just be emboldened by weekends like this?
I think we just have to hope that the regime does fall. I mean, that's the big question, because if we end up with another Ayatollah who's 84 instead of 86 with the same exact ideology, then we could be here again in 5 years or 10 years. And we have to hope that after 50 years of this, the Iranian people will realize that maybe they made a mistake and that they'd rather go back to the way life was in the 70s, where religion was not the ruling ethos for everything in their lives.
Yeah, the theocracy that we might see, but then that will very much depend on who takes over control of the country. And I don't think at the moment, I mean, it is very early days, it is too soon to say, but I don't feel that we're hearing a huge amount from President Trump about who that might be yet. Maybe he just doesn't know. Does he know? We had one brilliant commentator last night who said there's no way President Trump would have taken this action unless he already had in mind a succeeding ruling class ready to step in.
I think the president's goal is just get this regime out and let the Iranian people decide who leads them next. I don't think it's a situation where the United States is going to be dictating who actually follows the Ayatollah. That will be up to the Iranians. What the US is doing here is laying the foundations for the removal of the most evil, barbaric regime on earth. And it's up to the Iranians what happens next. Hopefully, Iran will be moving in the right direction. Anything's better, I think, than what we have right now.
Well, our inbox is very busy this evening. Terry said it's the best president the world has ever seen. Also, and Catalan said they also have JD Vance as well. We have Starmer. A lot of you echoing that President Trump actually looked tired, they says Dave, when he was coming down the steps getting off Air Force One. He looks absolutely knackered. I know how he feels. I've not had quite as much to deal with this weekend, but no doubt even President Trump will be feeling the pressure now. Let me know your thoughts this evening, won't you? Stay with us. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, let's talk to one man who I'm sure isn't a fan of Donald Trump's actions in Iran. Joining me now is political analyst and author of Patriots of Two Nations, host of the podcast Dastardly Cleverness in the Service of Good, Spencer Critchley. Spencer, thank you so much. Great to see me. Well, the debate is raging here in the US in a way that it isn't in the UK as to whether President Trump did the right thing on behalf of the American people. Frankly, the entire world. Did he, Spencer?
You know, you may be surprised that my opinion on this is a little more complicated than just not trusting Donald Trump, and I do not trust Donald Trump, unfortunately. But I think sooner or later there was going to have to be some kind of military action like this against Iran. I think that people on both the right and the left, at least in the United States, but really across the world of liberal democracies, seldom really understand just what the ideology is that's driving the Iranian regime and its allies like Hezbollah and Hamas. And they want to look at it through the traditional filter of the way so more or less rational foreign policy and even military actions are conducted, where people are at least weighing various competing interests. But this really is a mystical, pre-modern ideology that's also wedded with Marxism and Maoism in bizarre ways, And the idea of winning battles or achieving strategic objectives is almost irrelevant to it. I mean, the way the Iranian regime sees the world, they are engaged in a struggle literally against Satan, trying to save the world from Satan, and as embodied by Israel, the United States, and the rest of the West. And if they have to go on suffering and dying for generations, they're perfectly willing to do that. Now, that's the regime. That's not the Iranian people, who are increasingly against their own regime. And many of them actually feel quite favorably towards the United States.
So how do you defeat that regime? Because I think what you're telling me is you can't beat an ideology with bombs.
No, I think that's quite right. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so concerned about this action, not because I think that it would have been possible necessarily to negotiate with the Iranian government, or that military action could somehow have been avoided forever. But because I think, and here's another area where I think people make mistakes, whether they're on the right or the left, is they think that the world is far simpler than it is, and they're still thinking in terms of 19th century clockworks, really, or machines with levers on them. If we pull this lever and push that lever, we can change an entire society. And the complexity of a society is far more complicated than the human mind can conceive. And certainly bombs are not going to bring about change in any society, let alone one as complex as Iranian society.
So if we put to one side then the idea that Trump's motivation was regime change, or to try to undermine the Islamic fundamentalism driving that part of the world, if his logic was purely to annihilate the nuclear capability of a regime which operates under such a medieval pre-modern mindset, wasn't he justified by that logic?
Yes, well, yes. Here is where I, believe it or not, roughly line up with Trump if that is his motivation. Now, I would also caution, I think it's a grave mistake to think he has any consistent motivation from one day to the next. It's constantly changing. But I agree, it is absolutely unacceptable. I think many people would agree with me on this, again, on the left and the right. It's absolutely unacceptable for the Iranian regime to have any kind of nuclear weapons capability. And sooner or later, it would have been necessary to use military force to remove that possibility unless they came around to eliminating it. President Obama did make significant progress on this with the JCPOA agreement that did impose real restrictions on Iran, including cameras everywhere and constant monitoring to make sure they were honoring the agreement. Trump famously tore that agreement up when he took office the first time. But even that was only a temporary measure forestalling the inevitable if Iran did not actually eliminate its capabilities. And I think really, if you understand the ideology driving Khamenei and the other senior leadership, going back to the Iranian Revolution in '79, they had no intention of eliminating that capability, because the idea of using nuclear weapons against Israel and or other Western countries fit perfectly with their incredibly twisted ideology.
Is there a clear line of succession, do you believe, Spencer, in Iran? Do you get any sense that President Trump knows what that might look like?
Well, I think here we stray well outside my area of expertise that I might claim. I don't think anybody has a clear picture of that. I certainly hope that the CIA, Mossad, and other experts in the area would be consulting on this in a way that might be informing post-action planning. That would normally be happening. Of course, even in the best of circumstances, with previous presidents who have been far less unilateral in their decision-making and willing to go through a more normal national security consulting process, even they have made terrible mistakes in getting involved in actions like this. I think really we can only hope for the best, and hope that somehow the Iranian people are able to rise up and change their own government, which is the only way in the end this will work. But, you know, with 150,000, I think, Iranian Revolutionary Guard members, around 500,000 Basiji, and they're the only ones with weapons. And then there's all the other factions, even within the opposition, who don't agree with each other. I don't see how any of us can predict.
Fascinating. Spencer, thank you so much. I'd love you to come back on again, the host of the podcast, Dastardly Cleverness in the Service of Good, Spencer Critchley there. I'm really enjoying reading the inbox as well this evening. The protest by the Iranian people showed Trump they would support action if he took it, says Chris. So-called international law would enable this regime to kill its own citizens again and again. From what I've seen this weekend, says Martin, you do not mess with Donald Trump. And a lot of you saying that Starmer is a coward and a traitor. And a lot of you also complimenting GB News, which is lovely, on the work that everybody's done, working so hard this weekend. So thank you for that. Right, let's take a very quick break and we'll be back in just a minute.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I want to bring you a little bit of breaking news. It's that kind of time at the moment, isn't it? Witnesses are saying that there have been explosions in Beirut. Lebanese sources say that they are Israeli in the southern suburbs. Elsewhere, Lebanon's Hezbollah claim responsibility for projectiles launched from Lebanon into Israel. That's one of the things that we were talking about as we came on air, that it appeared that Hezbollah had also now got involved in this conflict. Now, earlier tonight, Donald Trump said he would continue until all the objectives are achieved. Have a listen.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't get there. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice.
Let's talk to Director of Policy Analysis at the Middle East Forum and former official at the Pentagon, Michael Rubin, now. Good evening, Michael. Well, I said at the start of that President Trump is spelling out his objectives. Are you clear what those objectives are?
Well, Donald Trump has gone a long way further than he had previously about what his objectives are. Before the military operations began, it was unclear if Donald Trump was simply going after the remains of the nuclear program, the ballistic missile program, or if he would be seeking regime change. Now it's clear he's seeking regime change.
Okay, and do you think he has a clear vision of how to achieve that? We've been hearing various commentators tonight saying, well, you can't defeat ideology with bombs, and actually whoever takes control of that country is going to determine how fundamentally Islamic the country becomes. Is that the kind of detail, though, that President Trump can dictate?
No, Donald Trump isn't a master of detail on issues like this, and I think he has in his mind something similar to what we saw in Venezuela. You know, when we look at whom the various bombs have killed, Ali Khamenei, Mujtaba Khamenei, his son, even Khamenei's grandson, as well as the former president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, one question everyone should be asking is, who hasn't been targeted? And in this case, Hassan Rouhani, the former president, or Mohammad Khatami, another former president, or the National Security Council chief Ali Larijani, all appear not to have been targeted. And so then the question becomes, is Donald Trump thinking that perhaps he could put one of them in as an interim authority? The other possibility out there, of course, is the Iran Freedom Congress, which recently met in London, or Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah. Now, in the case of Reza Pahlavi, one of the problems is, if you put someone like that in power, and he does have at least 30% support inside Iran, but if you put someone like that in, how do you keep them alive without boots on the ground? One of the lessons we learned from Iraq, and of course, you know, I was in Iraq, and I also used to live in the Islamic Republic of Iran, is when you insert someone, as the CIA did in 2003, and they get hacked to death, what's your plan B? In Iran, we need not only a plan B, but a plan C, D, E, and F.
That's quite chilling, actually, when you put it like that, Michael. President Trump said today he wants this to go on, I think it was no longer than 4 weeks. Is that looking realistic? The scenarios that you've just outlined there, that sounds incredibly unlikely.
Well, let me give you another scenario. Now, in 2004, we have something in U.S. politics called the October surprise. And that's when one of the presidential candidates will drop opposition research on the other to try to take down the chance for election. In 2004, Senator John Kerry did this to George W. Bush, alleging that Bush had failed to protect an arms depot in Iraq called QAQA, QAQAA. And in that case, what Kerry alleged is that George W. Bush allowed insurgents to get tons of plastic explosives that were being used to kill Americans. Now let's look at Iran. In 2007, Mohammad Ali Jafari, who was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps at the time, decided to put one Revolutionary Guard unit in each province. So you have 32 different units, each with their own arms depots. What are we doing to protect those arms depots? Or could there be a mad rush between competing Revolutionary Guard units or even competing political movements throughout the country?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Michael. We've run out of time. I'd love you to come back. Fascinating stuff. Stay with me. It's the top of the hour. Back in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office.
As we head into a new week, we have high pressure building. We'll see a mix of cloud and also some sunshine, but where we do see any sunny spells, it's certainly going to be feeling a bit more like spring. Now for today, unfortunately, there is still some rain in the forecast. Quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland, northwest England, also parts of Wales and eventually southwest England. But to the south of any of this rain, lots of clear skies, so actually lots of sunshine around and lots of dry weather too. Some brighter spells too across northwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, though it's likely we'll start to see some showers into the afternoon. But as I say, where we do see any sunshine, some quite mild temperatures for the time of year, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so feeling a bit more like spring, particularly if you compare it to the weather we had yesterday. Now there will still be some cloud lingering on through this evening. This is still thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across any hills of Wales or northern areas of England. Just a few showers starting to push into the west of Northern Ireland, also northwest Scotland, but otherwise Scotland should see plenty of clear skies as we progress through into this evening. Any showers largely easing away. This is fairly similar across Northern Ireland too, and with those clear skies that means temperatures will soon dip away here, and it's likely we'll see quite a patchy frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But anywhere to the south of this, we've still got plenty of cloudy skies, so that's going to hold up temperatures a little bit more. So more towards the mid-single figures across much of England and Wales, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a much chillier start as we head our way into Tuesday. Now, through Tuesday, it's really when we start to see that high pressure building. So any cloud largely fizzling away. It might just linger for a time across southeast England, parts of the south as well. And this at times will produce some drizzle. But for most of the country, there'll be lots of dry weather around and lots of sunshine. Still that little bit cooler across northern areas, but where the cloud breaks up in the south, still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. We're bringing you lots of breaking news this evening. We're hearing that the Israeli military are reporting projectiles are being launched from Lebanon. Now, that's the first such launch from Lebanese territory since the start of the American and Israeli strikes on Iran. Explosions have been heard in Beirut. Lebanese security sources say they are Israeli missiles, and Israeli military has just said that it has begun striking Hezbollah across Lebanon. Meanwhile, Lebanon's Hezbollah says that it has launched missiles, drones towards Israel in retaliation for the killing of Iran's leader Khamenei. And just in the last few minutes, a Ministry of Defence spokesperson has confirmed our reporting after reports of a strike near Britain's airbase in Cyprus. There were no casualties There were no casualties, the Ministry of Defence has said tonight. Our armed forces are responding to a suspected drone strike at RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus at midnight local time. Our force protection in the region is at the highest level and the base has defended our people. This is a live situation and further information will be provided in due course. Let's have a think about, first of all then, fellas, this situation in Lebanon. Hezbollah, obviously funded by Iran, have been involved in events since October the 7th and so on, to 2.5 years now we are from that. What does it mean if Hezbollah are also attacking Israel, Simon, except for the fact that things just got worse for the Israeli people?
I mean, it's completely expected because that's their paymaster and their funder and their ideological ally for their whole history. So you would expect that Iran was calling in a favor, saying, "Hey, you guys owe us one. Do what you can do." Now, poor Lebanon, which has been essentially a failed state divided up into armed camps for a generation now, is in the thick of it.
So, Niall, your thoughts on this? I mean, there's quite a lot of British people who have contacts in Lebanon now. There are a lot of British people with family that live over there. There's a lot of Lebanese people living in the UK. How dangerous is it going to be, do you think, right there tonight?
Well, I think that clearly this is a multi-front war, and this is all anticipated, that Hezbollah would be drawn into this conflict. Same with the Houthis. I think they will also be joining the Iranian proxy terrorist movements, and so I do think the Trump administration has fully anticipated this. The Israelis, of course, have been actively fighting against Hamas and Hezbollah for many, many decades. The Israelis no doubt see this as an opportunity to wipe the floor with Hezbollah now that their masters in Tehran are literally being floored. And so this is a moment, I think, for Israel to destroy Hezbollah and destroy Hamas. And so this is an incredibly complicated, sophisticated, multi-front conflict, a wider war. We have an opportunity to win this now against multiple adversaries, and Iran is the nexus, the central force that keeps together these Islamist terrorist movements, and Israel sees the opportunity now to decisively, literally wipe the floor with these terrorist movements.
I wonder if I can bring in London as well while we're having this conversation, whether Paul Cox can contribute to this. Paul, my feeling when you're dealing with these sorts of people and these despotic regimes and these Islamic fundamentalists, it feels a bit like whack-a-mole. You take them out in Iran and they pop up in Lebanon, and you'll take them out in Lebanon and they'll pop up again in Syria or in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And how do we fix this? Is it completely unrealistic to think that Donald Trump can put much of a dent in what has been thousands of years of despotic mindset?
Well, I think we have to try and fix this. It's reached a sort of pinnacle point now. And just for our viewers, because I'm sure you're aware, and I know Niall will be, Iran funds a large number of groups, actually. Obviously Hezbollah, we've talked about Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthi movement, the Iraqi Shia militias. There are some Syrian groups as well. all of these groups are going to become very active over the next couple of days. I'm no expert, but that would be my expectation. And as a result, my gut feel is that Donald Trump and the US would be totally aware of this. This would not be a surprise to them whatsoever, and this is why he sees this going on for 4 weeks. It's inevitable now. Now that we've gone in and attacked Iran, and I say we because we are very much part of this, irrespective of what Keir Starmer says and thinks. I think he's become marginalised and irrelevant to some degree. But it will take 4 weeks to attack all of those different groups and get some sort of stability. And fortunately, we are on the side of the US and we are on the side of Israel. And it's going to be a tough few weeks, but inevitably with anything that needs doing of this nature, it's going to be hard. And you know, our thoughts and prayers are with absolutely everybody involved. I mean, let's not blame all the Lebanese in the same way as we don't blame all the Iranians. Hezbollah are a small percentage of that population, and there will be Lebanese civilians tonight and Lebanese family members in the UK that will be incredibly worried by what's gone on. And it's very likely that it was Lebanon, i.e. Hezbollah, that attacked Cyprus. Should all that come out, and we don't know all the detail right now, we do know there's been an explosion, that is likely to have come from Lebanon. That is not likely to have come from Iran. So the Middle East is kind of on fire at the moment, and we're going to be very much reliant on the US to put those fires out.
Let's have a quick look of the footage that we have of that strike in Beirut just moments ago. Here we go.
يا ساتر يا رب ايه هون
Okay, that was it. That was very short, quite difficult to ascertain. Let's play that again just so we can see. I don't know whether this is the moments after the impact. I guess what we're looking at here is that dust cloud there is the moments after the impact. It's clearly a civilian area. It's clearly a residential street. There's somebody going past on a bicycle. There's a flashing light that it might be either a pharmacy or a bar or something there. Lights on in the basement and the ground floor as though it may be potentially a restaurant, something like that. I wonder, Simon, how the people in Beirut will have been living tonight. And what I mean by that is, would they have already been cowering in their homes, thinking that this might happen? Like, would they have already been on a war footing given the instability in the area?
You really think so? I mean, they had to know that something was likely to come out of Lebanon and to come back in. And of course, as Paul said, you know, it's not like all Lebanese are on the same team. You've got some who are rooting for the United States and the Israelis to take out the Iranian regime, and you have others who are in the pay of the Iranian regime. So yeah, I imagine Lebanese with any sense would have stayed home tonight and gone down to the basement.
Lebanon's Prime Minister has just said launching projectiles from southern Lebanon is irresponsible and a suspicious act jeopardising Lebanon's security. What does he mean by that, Niall? I can't quite work that out. Lebanon's Prime Minister has said launching projectiles from southern Lebanon is irresponsible and a suspicious act. Well, they're not talking about themselves. We just need to have a look at that. That might be.
Yes, I mean, I presume that's referring to Hezbollah attacking Israeli targets. Israel's now responding.
Got it.
And so, you know, of course, Hezbollah is the cause of Israeli retaliation here.
I see.
I presume that's what.
So it's the Prime Minister of Lebanon criticising Hezbollah.
Yes. I believe that is correct, and especially as Hezbollah is in a significantly weaker position now that their masses in Tehran are being taken out.
Well, are they? This is going to be the big question, isn't it? All of these terrorist organisations, which Paul just outlined there, everyone from Hezbollah to groups in Syria and Afghanistan and all across the world, frankly, and also in the UK. How compromised are they going to be if the money tap dries up from Iran? And I just can't see that it would, despite the Ayatollah being killed and many members of the senior leadership, if you like, the regime in Iran having been dispatched this weekend. they have so many trillions of dollars that money flow will surely still continue to all of these groups around the world. How do you turn that tap off?
Well, I'm not sure it'll continue at the same rate. I mean,
Really?
if they lose their ability to export oil to the Chinese and to evade sanctions, then I think they will be squeezed, because they've got, what, 90 million people, and the Iranian economy is not doing well. They've subsidized, their own economic mismanagement for 50 years. So I'm not saying the money would be cut off, but it would be much harder for them, I think, to fund in the same way Hezbollah and Hamas and all the others the way they have.
Because ultimately, that is what we in the West want, isn't it? As much as we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, and as much as we care about the Iranian people and how awful it is that they've been treated, particularly the women in that country, how they've been treated for decades now, what we in the West want is to undermine the terrorist organisations which threaten our lives every time we get on a tube or go to a Christmas market. That's where we want to choke off that threat.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you imagine if we had an Iran that was actually an ally of the West?
Yeah.
As it once was.
Or a Middle East that's an ally of the West, a peaceful regional settlement.
We have seen, strikingly, nearly all of the Gulf states uniting around the United States and supporting US military action, and of course they're being targeted by the Iranian regime. And so we do have right now, I would say, thanks to President Trump's leadership, much of that region actually supporting US military action. This is an extraordinary state of affairs, and this is down to the fact that the United States is boldly leading here. And President Trump wants to transform the future of the Middle East, actually. And this is a huge game changer. If the Iranian regime falls and it's replaced by a pro-Western government, a return to the pre-revolutionary era, for example. I mean, this is one of the biggest momentous changes in the world that we've seen in many decades, if this happens.
Yeah. We've also got another breaking line for you now. The Reuters news agency is reporting that explosions have been heard in parts of Tel Aviv and Israel, of course, but without the air raid siren warning. The source of the explosions is unclear. So that's extremely worrying. Of course, for people who live in Tel Aviv, they will hear the siren, they will get a notification on their phone that tells them they have to go underground, get in the bunker. What does it mean, Simon, if we are understanding that explosions have been heard, but we haven't had the air raid siren? What could that be?
Wow, that your head spins with speculation. I mean, I suppose it could always be sabotage, people there physically, but maybe more likely drones or things that were able to fly low and evade the systems, the warning systems, or maybe something so small that it wasn't picked up. There could be so many different reasons.
Yeah, we'll keep across that as we go along here this evening, of course. I know there are a lot of people back home in the UK that have friends and family in Israel, and it's extremely worrying to know that bombs might be dropping or drones might be causing damage in that area without the sirens going off. Now, one of the pieces of footage that I saw online today, which I thought was not getting the attention it deserved and was extremely heartwarming, were the number of Iranian Christians celebrating and coming together and being free to celebrate their religion. That must have been also incredibly, what for you? What do you think when you see that?
Yeah, immensely moving, powerful scenes, and also sending a very clear message that the United States has to continue with this operation and see it through. We cannot see this regime in Iran just wounded and then back in, or maintaining power. It has to go, because so many brave Iranians are taking to the streets, celebrating, of course, what they see as the downfall of the evil regime. We're seeing scenes, of course, in many cities across the world, including London, where you have Iranian expatriates who are celebrating alongside Jewish Londoners, for example. And we've got to see this operation being completely fulfilled here, and the removal of this regime. Otherwise, there will be huge retaliation against those who have been celebrating the killing of the Ayatollah, for example. We will see a bloodbath on epic scale if we don't get rid of these monsters, actually. And so we've got to see this mission through And we've got to remove this regime from power. It cannot be allowed to stay in power. If it is, then there will be huge retribution against pro-American forces, those Christians in Iran, for example. There will be retribution. So we've got to stop this from happening.
Somebody's made a very good point on the your say here, Simon. Joe says Putin is very quiet at the moment. I do hope John Healey is at least doing one thing right and protecting our shores at the moment. What might President Putin be thinking right now with your psychic telepathic hat on? I know that's a big ask, but where does he sit in all this?
Well, his sympathies obviously lie with the Iranians and against the United States. But I think he's probably just, I hate to put it this way, but enjoying, watching us struggle and have a difficult situation and put our lives at risk and hoping for the worst, because that's going to help him get what he wants in Ukraine. He thinks that maybe we're taking our eye off that ball and our money and our munitions and other things. That
and he's probably right.
Well, yeah, to some degree. There's only so much ammunition around and so much money and so much attention. So I think he's probably, frankly, enjoying this, but maybe not wanting to gloat too much in case that the eye should turn back to him.
Yeah. Actually, I'd add something to that. I think that Putin could well be rather nervous, actually. He looks at the efficiency of the US military. We saw that in Venezuela. We're seeing that now in Iran. And you compare that with Putin's operation in Ukraine, which has been largely unsuccessful, actually, despite the loss of 1 million Russian soldiers dead or wounded. He's hardly made any ground, actually. It's only in recent months. And the US military is vastly superior compared to the Russians. The Russians, we were looking at this very, very closely. And they're not going to be taking on Donald Trump. That's for sure. I mean, President Trump, the Russians and the Chinese will be viewing Trump as incredibly formidable and dangerous. And this is also a big lesson for the Chinese as well. If they want to try and take Taiwan, that if they want to take on the US military here, they need to think again.
Okay, let's, Paul, your thoughts on that. I know that it's complicated at the moment, but I thought that viewer pointing out Putin's very quiet. I mean, Putin doesn't have the same Twitter habit, let's say President Trump does, and we should probably be grateful for that. But he does have representatives from Russia who will often put posts out on X. This would be an opportunity for him to gloat at President Trump, maybe. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Is this something that we're not thinking about here?
I don't see it quite the same way. I obviously understand, and he will be glad that the US and large parts of the West are distracted. He'll also be incredibly pleased to see Keir Starmer's reaction, by the way, the way that they stand out of lockstep with the rest of the West. But that's going to play into Putin's hands as well. This is where the stupidity of Starmer will inevitably lead us. But also, I think he'll look at it with some trepidation. If you think of the triumvirate as sort of Iran, China and Russia, China are always going to sit on the sidelines. We don't know what they're thinking, we don't know what they're going to do, but we kind of know they're not going to do anything because we're not going to threaten them directly. Russia very much rely on China, and they rely on Iranian oil as well. So I don't think this is good for Russia, and I don't think Russia can do anything to help anybody because they're exhausting their resources, fighting their neighbour, which they should never have done, by the way, and they are not winning at all. Russia in no strong position.
No. We're going to keep. We're just trying to verify what's happening at the moment in Beirut and also in Israel. Whether those reports of bombs, explosions being heard, frankly, but without sirens going off. This is the footage that we showed you just earlier from Beirut. Which accompanied a statement from the Prime Minister saying that it was in a, what did they say? Lebanon's Prime Minister said launching projectiles from southern Lebanon is irresponsible and a suspicious act jeopardising Lebanon's security. Let me have a look what you've all been saying at home. Iran will run out of munitions very quickly, says Groucho Marx. USA have had a long period to analyse that. Is that likely, Niall?
Yeah, so I mean that's actually a very interesting point because Iran will swiftly run out of munitions, and I doubt that the Russians and China are going to bail them out, actually. And so Iran can fight for a very limited time, and eventually they're going to run out of missiles and other armaments. And the United States, in contrast, doesn't have infinite resources, but it has vast resources, and President Trump is in the process of increasing the US defense budget to $1.5 trillion. It's currently at $900 billion. And so the US can fight a war like this for years and years, if not decades. Iran can fight just for a couple of weeks, maybe. So eventually they're going to run out. And you're seeing all these missiles being fired almost haphazardly, actually, against US Gulf allies in the region, Bahrain, for example, UAE and so on. Iran cannot sustain this for more than probably a few days.
Yeah. I wonder whether we should look at some of the front pages on tomorrow's newspapers, because I think it's always interesting to see how the British press is handling something which is so far away but obviously does have an impact on us here. You won't be surprised to know that, of course, everybody is leading on the situation in the Middle East. And focusing on what happens to the Brits. We'll bring you those in just a minute. Middle East rocked by a second day of bombing, says The Guardian. Now, what we noticed yesterday when I was on air, or last night, fellas, was that the British press, actually the left-wing British press, and actually some of the right-wing British press, were depicting this as Trump being trigger-happy, a neocon. There was pictures of the explosion in Dubai next to President Trump, and saying that Brits, they're almost making it look like this was him attacking Dubai. I mean, it was kind of extraordinary to see the papers do that. And when you sympathise, when you sympathise with the likes of Caroline Levitt saying fake news.
Yeah, I mean, it's that joke. It's all about you, isn't it? You know, that people sometimes see everything through, and you can sort of understand that. And the papers are to sell papers, but the bigger picture, you're right, is much more important.
Yeah. Let's have a quick look then at the front pages, how they're handling it tomorrow. Telegraph, Britain backs the war on Iran, and actually do have pictures of Iranian women celebrating. That depicts this as a more positive encounter that's happening in the Middle East, as opposed to President Trump just trying to rule the world. The Independent, they are running with 3 US troops dead as attacks escalate across the Middle East, and one of their comment pieces, Donald Trump's attack on Iran is the most important moment in world history since 9/11. That's an excellent talking point, of course. Let's move on to the Metro. Death throes of the tyrant. Now, that is, of course, in relation to the death of their supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, and I don't know where that picture is from. Any idea where that photo is from, fellas? We don't know where that is. Let's.
From Tehran, I think.
Is that in Tehran?
I believe it is. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Mail. Mail, they are, of course, focusing on what might be happening to the British people overseas. They're leading with UK draws up rescue plan for Britons trapped in Gulf states. And they have the picture of Dubai. That was the Fairmont Hotel, which was hit. And we believe that was because it was close to a military base. I know people at the moment in Dubai. You must know. Do both of you know people in that sort of part of the world at the moment?
Yeah, it must be a very, very frightening situation. And there are, I think, close to 100,000 Brits actually living in the Gulf states at the moment. It's a huge population. And I do think Keir Starmer has been very slow to act, actually, in terms of evacuating Britons. He's been just sleepwalking the whole time. Even his latest statement was, he seemed half asleep, actually, and so there's no confidence in Keir Starmer's handling of the situation.
He's constantly looking at, I believe that he's constantly got one eye on the Muslim population of the UK and whether he can win their vote in the next election. That appears to be
motivating. It seems to be the dominant factor dictating how Starmer moves on this.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it makes you cynical, but he looked like a deer in the headlights reading off a teleprompter, like he just hadn't quite figured out what the strategy was. And 100,000 people living in that part of the world, someone needs to defend them. And they seem kind of random targets.
Let's see what The Guardian are leading with. They obviously were very critical of President Trump in their front page. Yesterday, Middle East rocked by a second day of bombing. An extraordinary photograph. There, Trump says he is still open to talks with Iran, and 165 die after strikes hits the school in a southern city. Let's move on to The Times. Trump vows to press on. There we go. And again, thankfully, Iranian women celebrating. There were the most extraordinary pictures coming from London yesterday of a young Iranian people, predominantly women actually, dancing side by side with Jewish people on the streets of the UK. And if we are ever going to see a grand regional settlement, this may just be the kind of imagery we look back on and realise that this is where it started. Let's move on to the I paper. UK planning to evacuate Britons from Middle East as Iran war grows. The same issue there. How do we get people home? The Sun, of course, leading on a similar issue. Escape from Dubai. UK bid to rescue up to 94,000 people, and Trump saying, I have agreed Tehran talks. There are so many Brits, as you say, Niall, who have gone to Dubai. Social media at the moment, Instagram has been full of them for the last 2 to 3 years. Why? Because young people in particular are sick of paying so much tax in the UK, absolutely sick of it. They feel like there's no aspirational ambition to be had in the UK. Paul Cox, you can help me talk over these. That's why Dubai has been so appealing to people. And it is deeply worrying, Paul. Do you know anybody that's there at the moment who maybe went out for some winter sun and wants to come back?
So I do know someone who lives between Australia and Dubai, and they're currently in Australia, thank God. A friend of my cousin's is living in Dubai. I was talking to her earlier, and she said that they're actually feeling quite safe. I think the communication in Dubai is very good. They can see that quite clearly the skies are being defended from their apartment blocks. So they're acting very decisively, which I don't want to keep banging this drum because I wish our leaders were much better than they are. But this indecisiveness from Starmer is what creates the nervousness and the anxiety. What they're getting in these places, in places like Dubai, is they're getting decisive information and action, and they can see what's going on, and they can see that they're being well managed. We seem to be supporting the other side in this country. That's how it feels to me, and that's an incredibly strong thing to say, particularly at the precipice of war like we are now. But I feel like we've got a situation where you are absolutely right, Bev. We have got a Prime Minister who believes, having seen what happened in Denton and Gordon earlier in the week, that seems like a story from 5 million years ago now, but seeing what the Greens did is scaring the living daylights out of Starmer. They are clinging on to power, and they are doing it for their own there's entirely selfish reasons. There isn't anybody that could believe otherwise. And you've only got to look at just the left-wing press. It's entirely inconvenient for the left-wing press that the people that are being liberated are the women of Iran. The idea that it's the women celebrating is very, very inconvenient for the left-wing press in the UK.
Yeah, it really is. They don't quite know where to signal their virtue when you've got women who want to overthrow the Muslim regime. Let's talk now, talking of Dubai, let's go to the immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson, who is in Dubai this evening. Ivan, a very good evening to you. How are you? How is life in Dubai? Is it scary? Do you feel well protected? Are the comms good from the government there?
I mean, I have to echo what the previous commentator, the comments he made, because absolutely. I'm going to give you an example. I mean, my golf club is still open, and I'm teeing off at 10 o'clock this morning. I don't want to sound flippant, but there's a reason for that, because in 2022, the Emirati government invested heavily in an anti-missile defense system, the best in the world. And the thing is, we don't have one in London. So the missiles that can reach Dubai can certainly reach London. And yet here, by and large, the defense system has worked very effectively. and the loud bangs that we hear are the drones being intercepted. By and large, very little has got through. Since yesterday, 10:15 a.m., we haven't heard a single bang. I'm in South Dubai, so I have a view all the way out to the Jumeirah Lake Towers and Dubai Marina. I can see it quite clearly from my balcony window. And no, we've not had a single bang since 10:15 a.m. yesterday. And people are not making a beeline for the road to Oman. So people are quite content with the way the Emirati government are managing this. The communication's excellent. We have an alarm system where the mobile phones go off if there's incoming missiles. So that's been really effective. A clear difference between the attitude and leadership of the Emirati government compared to the British government. We've heard very little from the Foreign Office. What we've been told is check our website, and that requires us to register on the website for further instructions. I mean, the disruption to people living here is that we can't travel anywhere. Effectively, the Brits are stuck here until the airspace opens again. But in terms of safety, everything feels safe. Another thing I've noticed also is my friend Anna, who went to Spinneys yesterday, noticed there were huge queues around Spinneys, circling Spinneys many times for food. So that's something different. And there was no produce like chicken and meat on the shelf. So I think people have been out shopping thinking fearing the worst. But our expectations are, if things escalate, we'd expect to be airlifted out of Dubai by the British government. We've heard nothing yet.
It's just extraordinary. And Ivan, I've spoken to you several times, but just to be clear, do you live in Dubai or are you there on holiday?
No, I do business in Dubai, so I'm traveling here quite often. So I've been traveling here since '97. Right. I have a lot of clients, Middle Eastern clients here. And I've seen this country develop since that time. And there's a feeling of calmness. And I'm a good person to talk to about the difference because I have a foot in both countries. And when you get to Dubai, the minute I leave the airport in Dubai, there's a feeling of calmness. When I land into Heathrow, there's a feeling of uncertainty and not sure what's going to happen and who you're going to run into on the tube and whatnot. So, yeah, I really enjoy this country, and I've been traveling here, as I said, for more than 30 years.
Well, what you're echoing there is this sentiment that Niall was just pointing out. And I don't like prime ministers and presidents being too paternal, because I don't think that's their job. I don't think they should be our fathers. However, there is something about competent presidential leadership or competent prime ministers, or even in the case of the Emirati government, it's like a good dad. It's like a really strong father that makes you feel safe. And we have at the moment, it feels the polar opposite in the UK. It's like the worst kind of father that you'd never know who's going to walk through the front door at the end of the day. And I think that's uncertainty with these U-turns that we see from the British government, for constantly flip-flopping on issues. We're not clear about the ideology, or maybe he is clear about the ideology, but he isn't honest with the British public about what that vision of the future is. Is that what you're describing, Ivan? You feel like you're looked after there in all the right ways while still having a certain amount of freedom?
Well, indeed, and there's a reason for that, because there's continuity in the government. The government are not looking over their shoulder who's going to kick them out. So the decisions being made are for the benefit of the people living here. Where you find that in the UK, and the government is spending most of its time surviving. So the energy, the thoughts, the decisions, the planning, it's not being focused on what's going to benefit the people of the UK. It's being focused on what's going to benefit the Labour Party in government and keep them in power. And also, we don't see our leaders on TV. We really don't. In Dubai, the residents don't see their leaders on TV every 2 minutes, but they know that in the background, the planning, preparation, execution is being done to protect the residents. And the metro's running. I mean, schools are closed until from the 2nd or 4th of March as a precaution. I think that's right. But the metro's running, the roads are running. The roads to Amman, which is the way out of Dubai, is absolutely no one's on it. So people are at the moment just sitting tight, hoping for the best, that the diplomacy will work.
I mean, it sounds like we're advocating for a dictatorship here, which I don't think we are, in a way. It clearly comes with some benefits. But also, you've got the low tax culture there, or zero tax, Ivan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got the low tax. You've got there've got to be compromises, though. Like, what are the disadvantages to living in Dubai? Not least the fact that you're in a very volatile part of the world. But for a Westerner, what would be difficult about being based over there?
Well, you have to know Dubai is very different from the other Emirates. There's also the other Emirates, and the culture is totally different in Sharjah, for example, or Fujairah or Ras Al Khaimah. So Dubai is very much Western attitudes to many things, and this is why it attracts so many Brits. Americans tend to go to Abu Dhabi more than Dubai, but the Brits love Dubai because it feels it's very similar to the attitudes we have about how women are treated, for example, how foreigners. I mean, look, take religion. People are open to have worship whatever God they want, and the government provides churches and temples and gurdwaras and places of worship for foreigners. It welcomes foreigners, and 90% of people living in Dubai are foreign. It works. What they don't let you have is a Emirati passport. This is the deal. You can come here, abide by our rules. You can stay here and work here. But if you don't work, you have to leave. And that's the deal. And you can never, ever be an Emirati citizen. And things have developed really, I mean, over the last 30 years. I'll give you an example. Workers, construction workers, they have a right not to work certain hours during summer, the summer period, where it's very, very hot. So Dubai is developing in a way very much on human rights. And I hate to say that word to you. I'm a human rights lawyer, but they in a good way. So I think the government of Dubai should be congratulated.
You're clearly doing very well out of your human rights legal work, Ivan. Am I allowed to say potentially at the expense of the British public?
Not at all. I don't take a single penny of taxpayers' money, and I certainly don't take any money from legal aid. So my work is purely funded by private client.
I'm not talking about taxpayers' money. I'm talking about all those people that you fought to stay in the UK, where maybe they potentially arrived illegally. But I'd have to be reminded of exactly the type of immigration lawyer that you are, Ivan. But that's your wheelhouse, isn't it?
No, it isn't. No, I'm a commercial immigration lawyer, but my passion is for human rights. So I do have clients I work for, which I do on a pro bono basis. I'll give you an example. A young man's being chucked out of the country in the UK. And, you know, he's a young man, and he did something many, many years ago, and the government are hell-bent on removing him. Totally unfair, against his human rights. I will fight for his rights till my dying breath to make sure he remains in the UK.
Okay, well, we really appreciate your insight this evening. It is reassuring for people watching who have got loved ones in Dubai to know how very well protected it is. And I wish you a fantastic game of golf in the morning. Ivan Sampson, the immigration lawyer, friend of the channel, joining us live from Dubai. Right, let me know your thoughts this evening. GBNews.com/your say. Do we have breaking news now? I don't think we do. Right, we have a guest now. Let's talk to former CIA and director of the Center for American Security at the America First Policy Institute, Jacob Olidort. Thank you so much for joining us. Former CIA and director of the Center for American Security. How secure is America tonight, do you think? And did Donald Trump do the right thing?
He most definitely did the right thing. It's great to be with you and your viewers. This is a historic event, probably unrivaled with a close rival, the fall of the Soviet Union, I mean, this has global effects. Our engagement in Iran, and I speak, by the way, in my personal capacity, not reflecting my prior employers. I've had the privilege of serving in different capacities in the United States, and the United States as well is secure. I mean, it's important for viewers to understand that there are threats, but as well in thinking about and planning this engagement, this historic event. My assumption is that those scenarios have been factors in how we and our partners think about, the implications and so forth in these actions.
Where do we go from here then, Jacob? Because President Trump will not want this to be a big, protracted conflict. The American public don't have the appetite for that. He will need reassurances that the nuclear capabilities are absolutely ended, that there's no chance they can start to enrich uranium again. And what else? What will a complete project look like for President Trump?
Yeah. It's so the president, in his remarks following the launch of the operation, clarified, and this is in the Constitution, his authority to take these measures to protect the American people from any imminent threats against them. That is the justification for this action. That is his authority as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States, as president. He's taking that action, and I think until that objective is met, that I think is what we're looking at here. And I think it's noteworthy that the administration had not revealed that objective prior to the operation, unlike what you saw last summer, where the objective was narrowly to take out the nuclear program. Here it looks at Iran's array of threats. It's a global terror network, it's ballistic missiles, which arguably are much more dangerous right now, and were the source of that imminent threat. Your prior guest described the threats that our partners in the region face from Iran's ballistic missile program, as well as its proxies all across the world. It's proxies in Latin America, as well as provision of drones and missiles to Russia as well. So this is a global threat. It's been ongoing for decades, half a century, frankly. And I think it'll be interesting for your viewers as well to look at Britain's response. Just today I read, obviously they have their own concerns domestically in terms of mitigating the threats, but even saying that they would take action to target potentially Iranian capabilities, which would be a formative change geopolitically.
Our viewers at home, Jacob, are concerned about sleeper cells. Mark says you have to be delusional if you think that sleeper cells won't wake up in Britain after this. It's terrifying because I live in London. You probably have a similar problem here, do you? How likely do you think that is as a former CIA agent?
Well, I can't speak to that specific context or our employer, but I think generally just thinking about what we know, I think the issue right now for me, obviously we understand and know just through the public record and what the regime itself has been doing and saying that it has a proxy network around the world. I suspect that our authorities as well are tracking these threats. What is unknown to me is the intentions and the calculations of the regime in such a degree of desperation and how it plans to escalate. That is, it's an interesting factor, and it's not as simplistic as it sounds. I mean, what we've seen before, Iran launching these volleys of missiles out of desperation, it remains to be seen for me. I don't want to be flippant about it, of course, but I also don't want to overstate. But I'm interested to see what proxies do in the region as a first step, whether they get involved on Tehran's behalf or they make their own decisions. And then as far as now, you look at the command and control of the regime being obliterated. I mean, remarkably, within 48 hours, the entire military infrastructure and political decimated. I wonder what that looks like in terms of how they direct these attacks, or whether these are spontaneous and what form that takes.
We've just got a bit of breaking news I can bring you actually, Jacob, which is that the Israeli military are saying that it has struck senior Hezbollah members in Beirut. What might the implications of that be, Jacob, in terms of the wider region and the stability there?
Yeah. Well, Hezbollah is the foremost and probably oldest Iranian proxy there, established in the early 1980s. Of course, Israel had that tremendous covert action operation last summer where they took out Nasrallah and all of their top commanders. The threat from Hezbollah is probably the most acute in that they have hundreds of thousands of these ballistic missiles and drones via Iran. Israel obviously is tracking these and has been preempting those attacks by taking out individual commanders as well as launchers and missiles. And so it's kind of a miracle that an attack has not taken place. But yes, I think this will be the main target right now, is dismantling Hezbollah and then simultaneously continuing to apply pressure on the regime in Tehran.
We're also hearing these reports from Reuters that explosions have been heard in Tel Aviv, but came without the air raid siren warning. Do you have any idea what that might tell us?
It could be any number of things. I think the most likely, the way these air defense systems work is that they are actually judicious about when they intercept a missile. So if there's a determination that it's going to hit an empty area, then they typically will not use, well, first of all, they won't sound an alarm in that area because there's a dense population there, and they probably won't intercept missiles if they know that they're most likely not going to hit a population center. So it depends on the neighborhood, the area where that missile was headed. Yeah, so that's probably as much as, based on that information, can be said.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Jacob Olidort there, former CIA and director of the Center for American Security at the America First Policy Institute. Your thoughts, fellas?
We talk about sleeper cells, and there's also the lone wolves and the wackos who get inspired. I just saw today there was a shooting in Austin, Texas. A few people killed outside a bar, and the guy who did it was wearing something like this belongs to Allah sweatshirt.
He had like an Allah t-shirt on,
Iranian,
Allah Akbar on his t-shirt.
Right, he was Senegalese immigrant, but he was wearing an Iranian flag, so probably not a paid agent of the Iranian regime, but there could be incidents of guys like that doing stupid things inspired just the way we've seen all the madness around Gaza.
Yeah, I've got just a couple of comments, and I'm just, based on the last couple of interviews that you conducted, they're very interesting interviews. The contrast between, the United States, the world superpower, and Great Britain today under Keir Starmer, it's night and day, isn't it, really? And you look at what the US is doing on the world stage, what it's achieving, and the ambition and the leadership you're seeing from the United States. And you look at the UK with Keir Starmer, who doesn't know what he's doing one day to the next, frankly. A government that is flailing, that is kowtowing, of course, to the Muslim vote in Britain. And I think that, what is, to me, incredibly striking about the developments of the last couple of days is the contrast between the US superpower and a sinking Great Britain under the socialist government. And let's not forget that just 3 generations ago, Great Britain was the world superpower. And you look at the UK now, and it's barely doing anything to protect its own citizens, of course, in the Middle East. It doesn't seem to really care. It has hardly any military power in the Middle East, and it's highlighting. I saw the statement coming from the British government today about highlighting how they shot down one drone, I think, heading towards Qatar, and you contrast that with what the United States is doing to the Iranian regime. And I really despair about the decline of Britain today, and the mindset of those who are leading the British government, and the contrast between the strength and resolve that you see here in the United States, or what the Israelis are doing, actually. And I think the Iran war has illustrated in so many ways British decline. actually. And I think that it's sad to see this, and we've got to reverse this. And the UK should have been, right from the beginning, shoulder to shoulder with the United States, part of the strikes against the Iranian regime. Britain should have been at the forefront. Britain was at one time the dominant world power in this part of the world, not that long ago, actually, a few decades ago. And look at the UK now with Kowtow Keir at the helm. Actually, I mean, it's absolutely, it's shameful, disgusting to see how far Britain has fallen under the socialist government. And thankfully, we have strength and resolve in Washington, in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. We have leaders who are still willing to fight for the defence of the free world. And you compare that with the sorry bunch of wets who are in charge in Downing Street in the Foreign Office right now. It's very sad, isn't it? It's a damning indictment of the state of affairs in Britain.
Yeah, I think it is. What did you make of the Denton and Gorton by-election?
Yeah, I mean, it's horrifying what has happened there, and the sectarian politics that has entered. The Green Party, of course, is even worse than Labour in this respect, bowing down to the Islamists to get their votes. And I do think that the by-election is a symbol of British decline, and we've got to really turn things around, actually. And Keir Starmer, of course, is himself beholden, I think, in many respects to the growing Islamification of Britain as a result of mass migration in recent decades. And you know, we've got to reverse the rot in the UK, actually. And I have to say that we are looking at a UK that's on its knees, and the by-election just a few days ago is a symbol of the decline of Britain today.
Paul Cox, I'm looking at what this might do for the economy in the UK. Iran is one of the headlines on the Mail Online just now. Oil shock after Iran strikes sparks fear of $100 crude driving up gas, groceries and interest rates. Wall Street is bracing for an oil spike that could spill into higher prices across the American economy. But it won't just be the American economy, of course. In fact, in many ways, the American economy might be rather protected from that because they're not relying on the Middle East for their oil and gas and stuff in the same way that we are in the UK. Have I got that right? Paul, are you worried about how the impact of this on our economy?
Well, we've already got an economy that's on its knees, inflation through the roof, the cost of living. You know, every time I go into a supermarket, it feels like everything's gone up by 20%. So, yes, it is a concern. I'm sure it's a concern for a lot of our viewers and listeners. And with regards to just listening to us talk about this tonight, with great reverence, and you know, there's lots of different perspectives. This has happened over a weekend, and much like Ursula von der Leyen, who has decided that she's not going to hold any meetings this weekend, she's going to do it on Monday to maintain her work-life balance. The mainstream media is going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to fear something. They're going to fear that they've lost grip of the narrative because it has slipped away. Niall was talking about the by-election then and what it meant. I was talking about it previously. That whole thing has slipped away from them right now, and this has taken over. And the way they're going to take grip again is to frighten us. They're going to talk about there's going to be a lot of Trump derangement syndrome, and there's going to be a lot of talk about how this affects the people in the UK and their pocket. There's not going to be a lot of talk about what we can do to make ourselves safe. What has got us into this position in the first place? And by the way, we are in a terrible position in the UK. It's a terrible time for this to happen. We have got governments and the people that they're competing with to hold that left-wing space kowtowing to the very people that would have harm done to us. Have harm done. It's not that long ago that Jeremy Corbyn was laying wreaths at the previous Ayatollah's funeral. So I do worry for this country, and I hope that people listening to this stay calm, keep watching GB News. People are going to try and change the narrative during the week.
That's right. Now, I would normally be saying goodbye, of course, if you are turning in on a Sunday night, Ben Leo's show, but you've got me because Ben is off on annual leave this weekend. I'll see you for another hour after your weather.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new week, we have high pressure building. We'll see a mix of cloud and also some sunshine, but where we do see any sunny spells, it's certainly going to be feeling a bit more like spring. Now for today, unfortunately, there is still some rain in the forecast. Quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland, northwest England, also parts of Wales and eventually southwest England. But to the south of any of this rain, lots of clear skies, so actually lots of sunshine around and lots of dry weather too. Some brighter spells too across northwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, though it's likely we'll start to see some showers into the afternoon. But as I say, where we do see any sunshine, some quite mild temperatures for the time of year, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so feeling a bit more like spring, particularly if you compare it to the weather we had yesterday. Now there will still be some cloud lingering on through this evening. This is still thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across any hills of Wales or northern areas of England. Just a few showers starting to push into the west of Northern Ireland, also northwest Scotland, but otherwise Scotland should see plenty of clear skies as we progress through into this evening. Any showers largely easing away. This is fairly similar across Northern Ireland too, and with those clear skies that means temperatures will soon dip away here, and it's likely we'll see quite a patchy frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But anywhere to the south of this we've still got plenty of cloudy skies, so that's going to hold up temperatures a little bit more, so more towards the mid-single figures across much of England and Wales, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a much chillier start as we head our way into Tuesday. Now, through Tuesday, it's really when we start to see that high pressure building. So any cloud largely fizzling away. It might just linger for a time across southeast England, parts of the south as well. And this at times will produce some drizzle. But for most of the country, there'll be lots of dry weather around and lots of sunshine. Still that little bit cooler across northern areas, but where the cloud breaks up in the south, still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning in London. It's 9 p.m. here in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the Late Show Live. Tonight we learned that the Israeli military are reporting projectiles are being launched from Lebanon. The first such launch from Lebanese territory since the start of the US and Israeli strikes on Iran yesterday. Explosions have been heard in Beirut. Lebanese security sources say they are Israeli missiles. Israeli military has said it has struck senior Hezbollah members in Beirut. Lebanon's Hezbollah says it is hitting back, firing missiles back at Israel. The IDF's X account has just posted this. IDF struck a short time ago in a targeted manner senior terrorists from the Hezbollah terror organisation in the Beirut area. In parallel, the IDF struck a central terrorist from the Hezbollah terror organisation in southern Lebanon. Additional details to follow. IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir said Hezbollah is opening a campaign against Israel and warned it will bear full responsibility for any escalation. And in just the last few minutes, the Ministry of Defence spokesperson has confirmed our reporting after reports of a strike near Britain's airbase in Cyprus. There were no casualties after a suspect. There were no casualties. The MOD has tonight said our armed forces are responding to a suspected drone strike at RAF Cyprus at midnight local time. Our force protection in the region is at the highest level and the base has responded to defend our people. This is a live situation and further information will be provided in due course. Thoughts, gentlemen? Niall?
Well, I think firstly, this is an illustration of the efficiency of the Israeli military operation. The Israelis have been preparing for a long time to fight a war on multiple fronts. They've been degrading, of course, Hezbollah's capacity for a very long time. In fact, they fought a major, I would say, semi-war against Hezbollah on the southern border of Lebanon recently, actually. And so I think that, with regard to Israel, they're looking at the big picture, which of course is the complete elimination, not only of the Iranian regime itself, but also their proxies as well, especially Hezbollah and Hamas, and if necessary the Houthis also. The Houthis have actually so far kept out of this latest conflict, but you can be sure if they do join this war, they'll be next. And so the Israelis, I think, have been planning for the potential of a major full-scale war against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and we're seeing the beginnings of that now. And so, and I have to say, so far, if you look at the efficiency of the Israeli strikes against Iran, they have been incredibly successful so far. And so this has been a joint Israeli-US operation. And I think that Israel has played an absolutely vital role alongside the United States. It's been a successful joint operation. The UK should have been actually also joining this military operation, but of course it's been on the sidelines and practically completely irrelevant.
Simon, are we irrelevant?
I hate to say that. I mean, my grandfather and great uncles fought in the Royal Navy and the Royal Marines and the Air Force in World War II. But yeah, it's not what it was. It was the biggest fleet. Britain had the biggest fleet in the world in 1945. And now, I think, barely one aircraft carrier. They can put one division in the field, one. And they had about 5 armies in the field in 45, 120 planes total. How many of those are able to be airborne at any one time? It's just a matter of resources and where you're putting your money and how strong the economy is. So unfortunately, even if Britain chose to play a role, it would be a supporting role.
Israel's military is actually far more powerful than Britain's today. The Ukrainian military is far more powerful than the UK's military. And so this is how far Britain has fallen, and it's got to rebuild itself into a great military power. And we need to see Britain rise up again, actually.
How do we even start to do that? We don't make anything, we don't do anything. That's the problem, is complete deindustrialisation, and we never replaced it with anything, did we? Thank you both. I think I've got a guest now. Let's talk to the visiting fellow for India policy in the Asian Studies Centre at the Heritage Foundation, Kriti Upadhyaya. Did I get that right, Niall? Kriti Upadhyaya. You must know. Do you work with Kriti?
Upadhyaya.
Kriti, you tell me how to pronounce your name. I don't want to get it wrong, my love.
No, that's fine. Good to see you there, Samuel. Samuel and I do work together at Heritage.
Okay, it's Niall Gardner actually,
yes.
but
hello.
But it's a very big organisation. So Kriti, thank you for joining me this evening. So, your thoughts as we sit here now. President Trump has a long road ahead of him, doesn't he, in order to convince the American people that this was the right thing to do, and that's going to start Monday morning.
Well, I think just with what's happening here and how these things are unfolding and how desperate really the Iranian regime has been and how they're going after pretty much everybody in the region, right? I think within the Gulf and Muslim states, Turkey is probably the only country they haven't gone after. They've even gone after Oman. I mean, nobody does that. You don't go after the mediators. They're taking out civilian targets, critical infrastructure, an Amazon data center. So I don't think it's going to be that much difficult to really convince people that this was indeed the right thing to do, because we really had this window when we struck, when the Operation Epic Fury took place, when the Iranian regime was at its weakest, be it politically, militarily, or even psychologically. And the way that this war unfolds, I think it's becoming more and more clear that this was the right thing to do. Having said that, like I said, this is a very, very desperate regime right now. They're going after anybody and everybody, and so it's even more important that the allies, everybody in the region, the EU, all of us come together. So I'm really encouraged to see the statement coming out of Germany, France, and the UK saying that they want to actually go after the origination of these missiles, missile batteries and drones. So I'm really encouraged this Sunday evening.
Okay, and is there any possibility you think that America may be hit by Iran? Like, what do we know about whether that's a possibility?
I mean, look, there are sleeper cells here, right? I think that's probably the only threat per se, because even if you look at the attacks that the Iranians have done on the bases, right, our defenses have been solid. I think the real winners right now of this whole operation are, the air defense capabilities, those Patriot interceptors, those THAAD missile systems, our counter-drone systems. So I think our capabilities are very, very robust. The Iranians haven't necessarily been able to do much damage. Damage within the U.S. is still a very, very long shot. I think the closest that they can come to is really activating some of those cells. And we're getting some reports, I don't know how confirmed they are right now, of certain attacks, mostly stabbings and shootings in Ohio, D.C., where I am, as well as Texas. So we'll see. That's probably the extent of what the risk could be in the U.S., so I wouldn't be too worried.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thank you, Kriti. Kriti Upadhyaya there from the Heritage Foundation. There was... Okay, let's go to Joshua Trevino now, Senior Fellow America First Policy Institute. Joshua, good evening.
Good evening, Bev. How are you?
Hi, yeah, not bad. Right, good to see you. I'm sure you have some strong thoughts about whether President Trump made the right decision to carry out this action in the first place, and why now?
Well, I do think President Trump made the right decision. And as he pointed out in his address that the nation saw on Saturday morning, there is almost half a century worth of casus belli that the Iranians have given the United States. American patience has run out. The threat has reached a qualitatively new level on a variety of fronts, with terrorism, with ballistic missile capability, with the efforts to continue to sprint to nuclear capability. And President Trump decided to act rather than contain, and I think it was the right call.
To act rather than contain. What does success look like, though, Joshua?
Success looks like a removal of the threat, and the particulars of that can look like a variety of different things. I think what is clear is that there's an understanding that what the United States can directly affect is the Iranian military infrastructure, is the ability to make war, is the ability to export terror, the ability to develop weaponry. And that's what the United States, by all accounts, is focusing on in the targeting list. The Israelis have a somewhat different targeting list, although it is complementary to our efforts. We're fighting as an integrated force for the first time, which is a good thing for, frankly, Western civilization. But it's the victory is going to be apparent when it is here. And I think the president knows that. He said as much. And so we have to let the plan unfold.
And do you think he has any plan for who takes over afterwards?
I wouldn't speculate on that. What he has said explicitly is that he has told the Iranian people that the power is increasingly within their hands and that the United States is providing an opportunity for them to do so. And I think he means it. We can anything that we would say to the contrary would be speaking without knowledge. What we do know is that he's opening that door, and he has said as much. And one can only hope, on grounds of humanity, that Iranians take the opportunity.
Yeah, and how likely is it, though, that the Iranian people can actually do that? Can come together and follow the inspiration of President Trump and try to install a different sort of leadership within that country? It feels like a very remote possibility.
Well, you have to give Iranians writ large this. And Iran is a very heterogeneous country, obviously. But going back to 2009, you had the Green Revolution then. You also have the defiance of the regime that unfolded just within the past 60 to 90 days that was extraordinary. Tens of thousands dead, and yet people continued to come to defy the regime on the streets. I would say look at the reaction to the reported death of Ayatollah Khamenei yesterday, with individuals going out, recording themselves, celebrating. Ultimately, it's their decision collectively. But I think what we can say is there is a considerable reserve of courage and willingness to defy a tyrannical regime in Iran that deserves an opportunity to succeed.
Okay, Joshua, thank you. From the America First Policy Institute, Joshua Trevino there. There was a story that was earlier today, we'll just let you know about that, which is that 2 people were killed after a shooting outside a beer garden in Austin, Texas. The FBI is saying that it could be terrorist related. Did you hear about this story today?
Yeah, I heard about that this morning. I guess he was a Senegalese immigrant, been here since about 2012, and he was wearing, he had a Quran in the car. I mean, it was almost like textbook, as if somehow he tried a bit too hard. So I don't know how much
Great. Thank you very much. Take care.
Had a screw loose.
Thanks, Josh. How about you, Niall? Are you expecting to see more terrorist attacks here in America?
Yeah, I expect so. And also, undoubtedly, of course, the Iranian regime has had sleeper cells operating in the United States for several decades. We could see a wave potentially of terrorist attacks, but I think at the root of this story here is, why was this individual here in the United States in the first place? Simon may know more about it, but I have to say that we've imported large numbers of Islamist extremists into the United States and also, of course, into the UK across Europe. I was in Brussels just a few days ago. That's practically an occupied city, frankly. I think that for several decades, liberal elites have basically brought a sort of fifth column into our midst here, and we're now seeing the results of this on both sides of the Atlantic. The situation is far worse, I think, in Europe than it is here in the United States. But I think this latest terrorist attack is the shape of things to come as a result of liberal mass migration policies that have been in place for far too long.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked to see that the Green Party won. I thought they were about hugging trees and trying to save the environment, but all of a sudden they want Palestine to be a unified country, with One man, one vote, and probably a right of return, which basically means the end of the Israeli state.
Not only are the Greens completely crazy, but they're very dangerous, actually.
Yeah.
And they support an incredibly dangerous Islamist ideology.
If it'll get them elected.
Yeah. And exactly. This is a rising threat in the UK, and we could see that repeated here in the United States as well, actually.
Should we have a look at the front pages? With me now is the host of Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. Paul, good evening.
Great work.
Hi.
Sorry, great coverage you're doing.
So
it's amazing.
Thank you. Well, it's been a long week. I did 6 hours last night and I've got to do 3 tonight. So, Paul, your thoughts on President Trump and what happens next?
What happens next is has to be more of the same. He obviously, you've discussed it, he doesn't want to be in there for a long time. I mean, he hasn't actually officially declared war. So what happens next is, I think within 48 hours of military action, the president, without declaring war, has to present some sort of written report to Congress. That's my understanding of the protocol. But Congress will want to say on this. They will want to have some kind of vote. I mean, I think the timing is very important because Trump is using all the political capital he has whilst he still has Congress on his side. And there is a worry, as you know, you're there in DC, that perhaps the midterms may go against him, in which case he will become a lame duck president. So he's trying to get through as much as possible. He is definitely going to finish this job, but the job, as I perceive it, that he's carrying out is to encourage the Iranian population to rise up. I don't think there's going to be boots on the ground unless the retaliation from Iran becomes more protracted. But my understanding is they're starting to run out of munitions.
I think Niall's got a question, haven't you, now?
Paul, thanks very much for coming on the show here. And I was wondering if you could speak a bit more about the significance of the Texas terrorist attack, actually, and what do you think this? What do you think this means actually in terms of potential future attacks?
I think we're going to see a lot more of these, but I think we have to be realistic. We've seen a lot of past versions of these as well. We're obviously, understandably, it's reasonable. The chap was wearing a hoodie that says "Property of Allah," had a Quran in the truck, and was this happened at 2 a.m. So after all this news was breaking, so in his mind, I think it's reasonable. And the suspect is now dead, so I think we can speculate. I think it's reasonable to say that he was motivated because of the attack on Iran. But look how many attacks we've had on mainland US, all over the world. We've had lone wolves, we've had sleeper cells operating for the last couple of decades anyway. It's understandable more people are going to be motivated. We're going to see more of these. But look, cutting off the head of the snake, which is Iran, is going to make these actions less funded. If you look at something like October the 7th couldn't have happened unless the US had given all that cash in 2 pallet loads via Biden and Obama. So whilst there might be an appetite from these sleeper cells, the funding hopefully now is going to be cut off. But yeah, we've had lunatics going for the last couple of decades, but we've tolerated them and given them community awards.
Yeah, great points, Ray.
Stay with us, Paul. We've got Paul Cox and Charlie Rowley in London, I believe, still. If you're there, guys. Charlie, thank you for joining us. You were obviously with me last night through that mammoth 6-hour stint. So we've seen more action today. We've seen more strikes across the Middle East. We've spoken to people in Dubai, British people who feel that they are fine, that they feel fairly safe. Donald Trump is back from Mar-a-Lago, and tomorrow morning he's going to have to face questions from the Democrats as to whether he has made the right decision in enacting this aggression against Iran. That's going to be something that he will have to manage. Do you think he's going to be able to do that, Charlie?
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's been a mammoth session, and the reason it's been a mammoth session is because there is so much activity in the start of this conflict, but also now people wondering what happens next. Israel and the US have absolutely made the right targeted attacks on Iran. Iran have responded, and that has brought into play, as part of that, because of certain US bases in the UAE, in Dubai, that has brought a whole region into this conflict zone, where there'll be lots of expats, lots of British expats, lots of expats right across the rest of the world who are there asking questions. What next? And so Monday arrives it's already here, but just in a few hours' time. Parliament will be sitting in the UK. I know the EU will be convening a meeting. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the EU Commission, will be convening a meeting to talk about what a EU response could be. But President Donald Trump has obviously had a very busy weekend down in Mar-a-Lago making these decisions, but will have to come back to the White House, as you say, absolutely rightly, to face the questions, to face Congress, to face the Democrats, to face actually opposition in his own party. This was the most extraordinary thing for me over the weekend. People in the Republican Party, people who are maybe particularly younger from the MAGA movement, thinking that actually this was the wrong decision. For me, I think it's the absolutely right decision. It was right for the US to intervene. It was, and I think, we've got to, from a UK perspective, I think that it was the right thing to do. But I defer to the American voice. Paul, what do you think? Is what do Americans think? What do Republicans think? Particularly the younger movement of the MAGA movement in the Republican Party. They seem to be against the decision. Is that the case?
There's definitely a seismic split in the MAGA movement, and yes, the younger MAGA movement, because so much of Trump's platform initially and his appeal before he actually came into office, probably came into office for the second time, was he was the president of peace. He's anti foreign wars. I mean, this is so much of the MAGA movement is feeling like the US administration has traditionally been more interested in foreign exploits than actually domestic policy. There's enough. Look, I'm hardcore MAGA, and I'm hearing it from both sides. I mean, I'm surprised at the comments from Tucker. I'm surprised at the comments from Marjorie Taylor Greene. They don't seem to be very pragmatic, because there's enough MAGA, and if I can, I'm now delegated to speak for all of MAGA. We understand with Trump, he's trying to get out of all these foreign theatres so that we can then finally pull up the drawbridge and be finally out of all these areas. You can't have Trump. Look at the negotiations that were happening with Iran. They were offering, up until a couple of days ago, 3 years of no enrichment of uranium, for example. Kind of when Trump's out of office, there was no long-term appetite to solve the problem in the region. Trump is trying to clean up things like Venezuela, things like Iran. By the way, China is the major export for both of those oil markets. So this is a way of trying to cut off the tentacles of China as well. He's trying to, I believe, that's his strategy, is get out of these theatres and then finally just retreat back to behind the drawbridge, behind the Great Wall of the United States, and get out of this once and for all. But there's no point being the president of peace if you leave everybody enriched and ready to attack you again in the future. So that's my take on the strategy, and I think many MAGA are seeing that.
Hi, Paul. It's Paul Cox here in London. To the American First gang, do they understand that what Donald Trump is trying to do is set the foundation from which America can put itself in the future? Or do they just not accept that there can be anything else other than American First, irrespective of what Iran might be doing elsewhere?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that there is a great misunderstanding about the phrase America First. Many people have interpreted that on my side as America only or America solely, and it isn't. It's America First. But again, it's interesting how many voices that were anti-Trump. I mean, a lot of the never-Trumpers have become pro-Trump now because they can see that he's finally enacting the conservative policies and the pro-America policies that have been neglected by both parties for decades. So, yeah, I think the split between MAGA, or America First, it veers back and forth. It's quite extraordinary. But I would say that he's still has the majority of support of Republicans, of dyed-in-the-wool Republicans. I still think, my understanding is he's still there with like 83% support is my understanding. So I think they get it, the long termers. Look, the MAGA movement is an ideological movement where many people came and they'll only vote for Trump. They only voted for Trump. And so they perhaps took things too emotionally, not literally. America first, not America only.
I think, Paul, you're absolutely right about that, and that's what appealed to, obviously, large swathes of the American public in all demographics, in all areas of the United States, which is why Donald Trump won not only the collegiate vote, but the popular vote. But in order to win the support back of people, I think what you touched upon just a second ago, raising Venezuela, look, in crude terms from the UK, if we were going to divide up the world, we would look at the US, the UK and the EU being in one bucket on one half of the divide. And then you'd have, on the other hand, you'd have China, Russia, Iran and Venezuela that you mentioned earlier on, because it was China that was obviously encroaching and working with Maduro, the former president of Venezuela, in order to enrich their economy, to grow their economy. And, you know, obviously China is the second largest economy in the globe, second to the United States. It's obviously, it trades with the US, it trades with the UK, it trades with the EU, but it is also an adversary. We've got problems back here in the UK with the Chinese embassy that's being approved, where we're not quite sure what underground cables they have or what secret rooms that they have, and all the rest of it. And we know that Chinese technology, both in the UK and the US, has been subject to controversial decision making, whether it was Huawei, for example, and 5G that infiltrates our infrastructure. So when you've got that division, and when the President of the United States has taken out Maduro for the right reasons, because a lot of Venezuelans were coming into the US in terms of immigration, it was an immigration issue, I think, largely, but also the oppression that he put upon his people, Donald Trump dealt with that. Now, that is a friend of Iran and Russia and China that is now no longer there. The President of the United States has now decided, along with Israel, to go after Iran because of not only the oppression, but the threat of a nuclear weapon, but also, I would argue, because Iran is in an allegiance with, Iran aligns with Russia and China. Now, these are adversaries of the US. These are adversaries of Donald Trump. Is this just a way in which that actually Americans can see, look, by putting America first, and actually the achievement of America first is all part of making sure that the adversaries of the United States, people that want to harm us, people that have the ideology of terrorism, just to get against the US as it is against the UK and the EU. And therefore, the US is going to intervene when it comes to serious partners or serious people who are going to harm us. Would that not appeal to the American public if the president puts it in those terms?
Yeah, 100%. And I actually think at the point I believe you made right at the very beginning is that we're actually, you've got Democrats supporting Trump on this and some Republicans not supporting Trump. So, look, it is, I think it's largely supported. Look, it's going to be largely supported until it goes upside down. If it all works out, it's going to be hugely supported, because the fact of the matter is, if we take out, my fear about China and global markets, etc., and just turn this into specifically a country for 47 years saying death to America, publicly, at the United Nations, death to America, and then finding out that for the last 20-odd years they've been actively doing war games with ballistic missiles and talking to any nation at all about getting enriched uranium, etc. When it's packed that way for Americans, it'll be fine. If this is a short conflict, absolutely, Trump's version of events will be the version of events. If this drags on, that's when the story can keep changing, and it looks like it could be short, because it just seems that I think was it 48 leaders he's taken out in the in Iran? Or is it 48? I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. You can't talk about regime change. This is regime obliteration. There is no regime to change anymore. It's like, did you see the comment from Trump? This fantastic thing that he said that. They said, who's going to lead Iran? And he said, well, they'll find somebody. He said, I'm even making jobs and job vacancies in Iran now. Quite extraordinary. The guy is shooting from the lip. But anyway, yeah, so look, some of it's going to be how does it go? But I think largely the American public are, I would say, sick of being talked to like they've been taken for granted for nearly 50 years, being told death to America. And especially the United Nations is in New York. They get talked to like that in New York City. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, I'm actually very optimistic for the outcome, because it looks like it's going the right way. In 48 hours, what he's achieved is remarkable.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Paul Doddridge, thank you for bringing us that extended section there. We are going to take a very quick break for the weather. See you in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new week, we have high pressure building. We'll see a mix of cloud and also some sunshine, but where we do see any sunny spells, it's certainly going to be feeling a bit more like spring. Now for today, unfortunately, there is still some rain in the forecast. Quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland, northwest England, also parts of Wales and eventually southwest England. But to the south of any of this rain, lots of clear skies, so actually lots of sunshine around and lots of dry weather too. Some brighter spells too across northwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, though it's likely we'll start to see some showers into the afternoon. But as I say, where we do see any sunshine, some quite mild temperatures for the time of year, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so feeling a bit more like spring, particularly if you compare it to the weather we had yesterday. Now there will still be some cloud lingering on through this evening. This still thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across any hills of Wales or northern areas of England. Just a few showers starting to push into the west of Northern Ireland, also northwest Scotland, but otherwise Scotland should see plenty of clear skies as we progress through into this evening. Any showers largely easing away. This is fairly similar across Northern Ireland too. And with those clear skies, that means temperatures will soon dip away here, and it's likely we'll see quite a patchy frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But anywhere to the south of this, we've still got plenty of cloudy skies, so that's going to hold up temperatures a little bit more. So more towards the mid-single figures across much of England and Wales, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a much chillier start as we head our way into Tuesday. Now, through Tuesday, it's really when we start to see that high pressure building. So any cloud largely fizzling away. It might just linger for a time across southeast England, parts of the south as well. And this at times will produce some drizzle. But for most of the country, there'll be lots of dry weather around and lots of sunshine. Still that little bit cooler across northern areas, but where the cloud breaks up in the south, still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, has been speaking to the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. We want to play you that now.
Shabana Mahmood, thank you for talking to GB News in Copenhagen in Denmark. Another day, another crackdown on immigration. But will this approach work? Will it cut illegal numbers?
Yes, look, I'm here in Denmark to learn from the Danish Social Democrats who have managed to successfully restore order and control to their borders. Asylum claims here are at a 40-year low, so their reforms here have been very successful. And I want to obviously make it less attractive for illegal migrants to come to Britain, and I want to do that in a way that's consistent with our values so that we always provide sanctuary to people that are fleeing genuine peril and, you know, coming out of war zones and so on, but in a way that is fair on communities, that recognises the scale and the pace of the change that has already happened and doesn't place more pressure on those communities. I think that the total package that I'm announcing and taking forward is going to have the effect of making it less attractive for illegal migrants to come to Britain.
And you'll assess migrants' visa status every 30 months, not 5 years?
Well, look, from now on, as you say, we will have asylum claims assessed after 2.5 years, coming down from the 5 years that it is at the moment. If people's home country is deemed to be safe, then they will be expected to return. It is a big change to make refugee status temporary rather than permanent, and it just recognises that the pace of migration has changed and the pattern of it has changed very significantly. In terms of numbers, I'm not setting a target. I'm doing that deliberately because I know that there have been historic targets that have been set and missed by the Conservatives when they were in government. So I don't want to, say something to people that I can't guarantee I can deliver.
And that's why people are so cynical about it, isn't it? Because GB News viewers will be watching this, throwing their cups of tea at the telly, saying, there's another politician saying they're going to cut migration. And 1.2 million undocumented migrants here, maybe. Or it's a lot of people here already here.
Well, and look, that's why I'm making a whole range of changes. By the way, changes that the Tories never undertook when they were in government. You know, we're changing refugee status from permanent, effectively a permanent system, to a temporary one. We will review cases more regularly. When a home country becomes safe, we will expect people to return. These are changes that no other party has made before. And I've made a decision that I'm going to look at legal migration, people who come on work visas and study visas, alongside looking at illegal migration. And it's just because I do recognise that the sheer scale of numbers that we've seen come into the country has been very high. The so-called Boris wave, I know that that's been discussed a lot on GB News. Your viewers will be very aware. Those numbers are very big as well. So I want to get the whole of these systems under control, deal with the issues of legal migration as well as illegal. And what I would say to your viewers is, judge us on our delivery. I've made a series of announcements. I've made, really radical changes. We'll be legislating later this year to put these into law and to make sure that the system runs very differently.
So when is that judgment for you? 2 years' time? 1 year time?
Over the next year or two, we will be rolling out these reforms, and I would expect them to start making changes. And of course, as we get towards the end of this Parliament, I'd expect the new system to be up and running. So I know it's frustrating, but what I would say is bear with us. I think we've got the right package of policy changes. They're very radical. It's big reform. Bear with us. Give us a chance to do it and then judge us on that delivery.
You've got Reform UK's, Muslim Home Affairs spokesman. He says last week his government would deport 6,000 migrants every week. That's a compelling message, isn't it, for voters tired of all these numbers?
It will be compelling if they had any means of doing that, and if they could demonstrate, the operational challenges that they would overcome, and also the money that they would put behind it and where that's going to come from. So look, I know people are angry and frustrated, and when you have a problem that's been running for so long and people feel really down about the state of our borders, and it feels like a problem the state can't fix, of course, a bunch of populists are going to come in, and they'll either say, like the Green Party is saying, open the borders full stop, or they'll be like Reform, which is suggesting that you can take people who've lived in this country for 30 years lawfully, we'll get rid of them as well. Neither of these two parties is offering real solutions. And what I would say to your viewers is, I know trust here is low. I know that people have been made a lot of promises before, but I am determined to get this system under control, to restore order to our borders and judge us on our delivery.
And yes or no, it won't be your government's 15th U-turn. You're going to go through with a package you're announcing this week.
I'm going to go ahead with this package as I've announced this week.
Now, let me show you a quick video. I won't show you all of it, but this is a video of migrants arriving today in Ramsgate, 500 today, the most this year. Viewers have given up on any feeling that your government will control these numbers. They look at this, it's just taking the mickey out of our country's generosity towards people. We put them up in hotels. I know you want to move them to camps, but when will you smash the gangs? When will this happen? Or even stop the boats, as the Tories wanted to do?
Look, I know this is a really, and look, I see these images every day, right? Looking at these numbers is what I do every single day. What I would say is we've made a range of changes. So our law enforcement cooperation with the French. I know people have strong views about cooperation with the French, but
they get lots of money. We get nothing back.
But we are cooperating with them, and we have prevented 40,000 crossings. So these numbers will be even higher. These numbers will be even higher if we didn't have that cooperation. The one in, one out model was a pilot to try and see if we could get a system of returns with the French. So I think we've shown that it's possible. Obviously, we haven't been able to do quite as big numbers as we would have wanted, but we will want to see them ramp up before the pilot comes to a close, before we evaluate how.
But will it go ahead after that pilot is finished?
I mean, we will evaluate and we'll work with the French to think about what we might do to scale it up. But what we're trying to do is lots of different things. There's no one silver bullet. I wish there was. because, honestly, if I could just do one thing and it would solve it all, I would have done it already.
And your rivals say there is, and that's what's so frustrating.
I'm afraid it's not, because, you know, as they come out of the ECHR, that, you know, for example, what Reform was saying, they'll have to renegotiate returns agreements with all of those countries. Those things take time as well. So I would just say beware people who come along and say, I can just do this one thing and it'll be done, because it's not true. If it was, the Tories would have done it, or we would have done it, and it would have been sorted.
That approach is...
But we can fix this.
Of course, today in Denmark, we've been to a deportation camp, we've been to a rivals camp. In the UK, you're moving migrants from hotels into army camps, like in Crowborough. Do you understand why people are so frustrated about this who live near Crowborough? The local people there have started a legal action against what you're doing. Do you understand why they're worried about migrants living in a camp near their homes?
Look, I understand the strength of feeling. Of course I do. I've had asylum hotels in my constituency as well. So I do totally get what local people feel when they see either a hotel or, obviously, as we're now talking about, military sites. I know how people feel. People have expressed that to me. We have to get out of asylum hotels. I think that those are posing unique challenges in lots of communities across our country, and it's acting as a pull factor as well. And we've seen public order problems as well. So I think, you know, we do have to get out of hotels. We've said we'll get out of every single asylum hotel. That's a manifesto commitment by the end of this Parliament. So we've got to do that. And military sites are a good alternative.
So what do you say to people near Crowborough? And would you live next door to Crowborough, or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand. But look, we've got to put people somewhere. We've got to address the pull factor, the public order issues. We've got to address the impact on local communities as well. So what I would say is, you know, we are putting in a facility that will be well managed with you know, security coverage that is 24/7, working really closely.
They can come and go, can't they?
Working really closely with the local police as well. Yes, because they're not detained, so it's not like a prison. It is an accommodation facility whilst people's claims are being heard. I know it's difficult, but we are required to put people somewhere, and I do think that military sites are a better alternative than the hotels that have spread across the country.
But would you live there? Would you have to live there with your children?
Yes, well, look, you know, I think that if the military site in Birmingham Ladywood and it was taken over, you know, I would accept that that's part of the solution. I do know, I'm not trying to do down the strength of feeling that's happening publicly. I know that people feel strongly about it, but, you know, I think the hotels are posing an even bigger problem in this country, and we do, of course, have to put people somewhere. And military sites with a much more basic accommodation that we're putting in, I think that's a better solution. It also addresses the pull factor of people coming in, staying in 4-star hotels that cost us £53,000 per person per year.
Insane, obviously. On to a different issue, though. When will the grooming gangs inquiry start?
So it's effectively up and running in the sense that, of course, we've appointed Anne Longfield as the chair, and we have the panel in place. There are draft terms of reference, which she is currently consulting on. I believe she's spoken to survivor groups already about those draft terms of reference. I think the full terms of reference will now just be finalised in a matter of weeks, and then it's up and running, and it's going to different parts of the country to investigate.
So it's started work already? It's
yes.
Not hearing witnesses yet, but looking at the terms.
The first important thing is to make sure everyone's happy with the terms of reference. So the draft ones have been published, which will show the full range of issues that the inquiry will consider. Anne Longfield and her team are currently consulting on that with, you know, stakeholders, with victims groups, with survivors, so that they can input into the terms of reference. She will then finalise those terms of reference, and then they're up and running.
Now, your minister, Mike Tapp, told me for GB News late last year that the inquiry was about ensuring if there's a link between ethnicity, race and culture. Is that still the case?
The issues on ethnicity and culture, as came up in the Louise Casey audit as well, that is all reflected in the draft terms of reference.
But not race now?
Yes, no, sorry. So race and religion are both covered in the draft terms of reference.
As almost a motivation in some cases.
Yeah,
it's controversial to say that.
Yeah, as a factor in the scandal that we have seen. Yes. So that will be looked at by the panel. It's in the draft terms of reference. As I say, she's already consulting with victims and survivor groups to make sure they're happy with the draft terms of reference, that they're expansive enough to deal with a full range of horrifying issues that we saw in that scandal, and then once those are finalised, the inquiry will be up and running. And obviously, I think once it's fully up and running and hearing evidence, you know, I think we'll be able to show victims and survivors that finally, you know, there's a chance of a proper process that gives them the answers that they absolutely deserve.
Just quickly on the Gorton and Denton by-election, the Green Party made some campaigning videos in Urdu. What do you make of that? Is it okay for parties to make political videos, messages in different languages to talk to different communities?
Oh, well, let me look. I can only speak for myself, which is I always campaign in English. But of course, people do speak other languages as well. I speak other languages, and sometimes you do converse in other languages when you're on the doorstep. It's not necessarily divisive, but what I think is actually really important is that we don't go down a track of sectarian politics. So, you know, I think it's really important for politicians to have something to say to every type of voter in an area, not just one type of voter in a specific area. So, you know, as somebody from an ethnic minority myself, I always try to build a broad coalition because I think that's in our pluralistic traditions, and that's the best of British. And I think that's the way that campaigns should be done. But that's a matter for the Greens.
Of course, and just very finally, how can Sir Keir Starmer improve in the polls? You're tackling or trying to tackle migration. That's one area that concerns voters. But what's gone wrong here? I mean, let's not go back over the past 18 months, all the missteps, but how can you get better?
Look, I think we have to deliver. As we've just been discussing in your interview, you know, we've made some promises, we've got some new policies, we're passing new laws. We have to show that the changes we are making can deal with the cost of living crisis, that can deal with the migration crisis, and can sort out the NHS. I mean, these are
those are three things.
Those are the top priorities that the country has, and I think on those three metrics, we've got the right package. We've obviously got to deliver.
Okay. Shabana Mahmood, thank you for joining us on GBNews today. Thank you.
So that was Chris Hope, of course, talking to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. First look at that here on Late Show Live. Looking at your inbox here, you weren't very impressed. Glynis said, "I'm sorry." She says Chris wasn't hard enough on her. How does moving illegal migrants from a hotel into a brand new exclusive flat or a house stop being a pull factor if they put them in the B&Bs that Brits moved into and moved the Brits into flats and houses? I could see it making a difference. Simply saying says, can someone tell Shabana we don't have to put them anywhere? Send them back to France, for goodness sake. And a lot of you saying the same sorts of things, that she really wasn't winning people over, Simon.
No, I mean, I'm struck by the numbers that you gave earlier. How many people live in Dubai? 95,000 Brits live in Dubai. And I imagine they're educated, tax-paying people who would be contributing to the national coffers and probably speak fluent English and don't need the same level of services. And you're replacing them with every single day, 500 people we saw, young men who are probably uneducated, have no immediate job skills that they can offer, and are going to be costing the British taxpayer thousands of pounds, maybe $500,000 over their lifetime. So this is just a crazy exchange, and I just didn't find what she said credible. I don't think Labour's going to tackle migration and keep any of their promises.
No. Let's go back to London. Paul and Charlie, still there. Are you impressed, Paul Cox, by what you heard there from Shabana Mahmood?
No is the answer, but at first I was kind of taken aback by there was almost a resemblance of charisma about Shabana Mahmood that we just don't see from Starmer, for instance. So as soon as there's a senior Labour politician, I'm just expecting just dishwater dull, but she isn't that. However, the substance of what she was saying is not politics, I agree with. I think a lot of our viewers are right when they say the solution is out there but no one's talking about it. We don't need to find different ways of putting up people. We need to find ways of stopping people from coming because you know, there's no room at the inn, Bev.
Well, some people were saying, does she breathe out of her ears because she talks so quickly? They don't know how she pauses for breath. And the thing is, Charlie, I often think with politicians who are like just so desperate to get their opinion across, they do need to somehow take a break. But that desperation, it can be a sign that they really believe in what they're saying and they want other people to believe them too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And look, you know, this Home Secretary has come in and she's got a job to do. She's been given a task, which is to cut the levels of migration, legal and particularly illegal, and those small boat crossings. She's had a difficult weekend because the Labour Party losing one of its most safest seats in Gorton and Denton to the Greens, where she's now faced, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has faced calls from her own party. People on the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Lucy Powell, has said that we can't govern properly if we continue to chase the votes of reform. So that's essentially saying that the Labour Party shouldn't be tanking to the right. It shouldn't be tanking towards reform voters who are obviously leading the polls time after time, who obviously are very keen on stopping immigration. So Shabana Mahmood's been in quite a difficult position. She was also blamed by some Labour MPs for being the reason why they lost the Gorton and Denton by-election, because those reforms that she's about to put forward next week are too tough. So she said, no, we've got to stick with them. And I think that's absolutely right, because Gorton and Denton is, I think, a one-off case. But the reason why I think what she's talking about is really important and what ties into everything that we've been talking about over the last 2 days. If you look at the #1 countries of people that come to the UK illegally through small boat crossings, it's people from Afghanistan, it's people from Eritrea, and it's people from Iran. Now, how do we square this circle now in the UK? It won't happen immediately, obviously, but because all kinds of things have been shut down, the canals, the waterways, the air controls all been cut off. But we are potentially, as a UK, going to see not just an influx of people coming across those boat crossings as the weather gets better in normal times. We're going to see an influx of people, I would imagine, particularly from Iran. Now, if we haven't dealt with the issue, if we don't back the US, if we don't back Israel to actually tackle the issue in Iran, if we can't get rid of the whole Ayatollah, the whole supreme leadership, and make sure that there is someone that is installed that the people of Iran can get behind, where it can be a democratic, open, tolerant nation that doesn't have the oppression and everything that we've seen, the violence, the destruction, everything that the Iranian regime, the former Iranian regime has stood for. If we can't get to a point where we can have someone in Iran that we can actually work with, then we're going to see huge numbers of people from Iran looking for refuge because they can't work with anybody else. They can't live under another vile dictator that they've had to put up with for so many years. So it is in the UK's interest, it's in the Western interest to make sure that we have a stable Iran, to make sure that we can actually stop some of the migration that we're taking, that we see take place, that we see that takes place, which obviously includes an awful lot of illegal migration.
Yeah, I think we've got one final Iran guest before we wrap it up for tonight. Gentlemen, let me talk now to Vice President and Senior Fellow at Yorktown Institute, Shay Khatiri, who grew up in Iran. Hi, Shay. Your thoughts on the situation in Iran this evening? Is it a positive time for you guys?
Thank you for having me. It is an exciting time right now after the massacre of over 30,000 people last month during the protests. And your one of your panelists was talking correctly about this, that there is the danger that if the Iranian people were massacred for nothing, again, they would just give up and leave Iran because there would be no prospect for a better life there, and they would try to find that better life in North America or Europe. However, over the past 24 hours or 36 hours, President Trump has enforced his red line, and now we are seeing, as well as Israel, and now we are seeing that E3 are joining the coalition in some capacity to give the people of Iran hope. And of course, the killing of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has been a monumental moment that Iranians in the diaspora especially, but also very much inside Iran, on the rooftops, on the streets, are celebrating. This gives people hope that, no, actually we could stay in Iran. The foreign world is finally hearing our voice to help us overthrow the regime. And this is important. This is not an American regime change operation. This is an Iranian indigenous project that Americans and Israelis are going to support and help. And they're hopeful. I have received some messages. Internet is completely disconnected, but to the extent that they have been able to communicate with people inside Iran, everybody's euphoric. Everybody thinks that this is finally the moment, after almost half a century of being terrorized at home and having their resources used to terrorize the region, they can finally be at peace in their own country and with the rest of the world.
Well, we have everything crossed for you, Shay. We're praying for everybody in Iran and hoping for the very best as the situation evolves there. Thank you so much, Shay Kateri, the Vice President and Senior Fellow at Yorktown Institute. Thank you very much. We're looking at the pictures here of Beirut. Everything seemed quite quiet at this time of the night, Simon. It was the same yesterday. Unusually, this strike seems to be occurring in daylight, which I think is unusual.
Yeah, I mean, I think we live in such a compressed news cycle that we expect this to be over and done by the end of the weekend. But I think we've just kind of opened up the book on a really, really long saga that's going to take, weeks, months, maybe even years to play out. And the Iranians, as Na was saying, they've got limited capacity here, and they're only going to, they're going to try to save some of their ammunition and lob it out over weeks.
Yeah, and what do you think the week will look like for President Trump? Because every time anybody gets a microphone under his mouth this week, it's going to be all questions about this, isn't it? You can forget the domestic agenda.
Yeah, the rest is gone. And he's got the lives of American soldiers and individuals in his hands. He's going to be taking that, I'm sure, very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, well, I have been Bev Turner sitting in for Ben Leo on a weekend. I will be back tomorrow night. 7 p.m. in DC, midnight UK. See you then. Night.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new week, we have high pressure building. We'll see a mix of cloud and also some sunshine, but where we do see any sunny spells, it's certainly going to be feeling a bit more like spring. Now for today, unfortunately, there is still some rain in the forecast. Quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland, northwest England, also parts of Wales and eventually southwest England. But to the south of any of this rain, lots of clear skies, so actually lots of sunshine around and lots of dry weather too. Some brighter spells too across northwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, though it's likely we'll start to see some showers into the afternoon. But as I say, where we do see any sunshine, some quite mild temperatures for the time of year, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so feeling a bit more like spring, particularly if you compare it to the weather we had yesterday. Now there will still be some cloud lingering on through this evening. This still thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across any hills of Wales or northern areas of England. Just a few showers starting to push into the west of Northern Ireland, also northwest Scotland, but otherwise Scotland should see plenty of clear skies as we progress through into this evening. Any showers largely easing away. This is fairly similar across Northern Ireland too. And with those clear skies, that means temperatures will soon dip away here, and it's likely we'll see quite a patchy frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But anywhere to the south of this, we've still got plenty of cloudy skies, so that's going to hold up temperatures a little bit more. So more towards the mid-single figures across much of England and Wales, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a much chillier start as we head our way into Tuesday. Now, through Tuesday, it's really when we start to see that high pressure building. So any cloud largely fizzling away. It might just linger for a time across southeast England, parts of the south as well. And this at times will produce some drizzle. But for most of the country, there'll be lots of dry weather around and lots of sunshine. Still that little bit cooler across northern areas, but where the cloud breaks up in the south, still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth